All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. It is 6:00 p.m., Wednesday, February 7th. Sarah, could we get a roll call, please?
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Laliotis?
Here.
Vice President Finn?
Here.
President Bender?
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Pledge of Allegiance. Tony, you want to lead us tonight? Sure. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Okay. GM Wright, any changes tonight to the agenda?
Yes, President Bender, we'd like to make one change and pull or remove consent item number 8. We had a software glitch in terms of the agenda publisher. The staff report wasn't included with the packet. So the item was agendized, but the packet wasn't there. Understanding that the board and the public might not have had or wouldn't have had an opportunity to review that staff report ahead of time, we'll pull this item. It's not urgent, and we can put it on the next month's agenda.
Got it. And that was number 8.
Number 8.
Okay.
I wonder if that in the packet.
Okay.
Hey, there's just my number 8.
Okay, we got one change tonight. Now we have some time set aside. We have public comment, time set aside for the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda tonight. Testimony to any agendized matter should be addressed at the time that item is considered. Is there any public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, I do actually have a public comment, so I'm going to walk down. It's nothing crazy, it's just. It's a public comment. It's a public comment because it's not on the agenda, 1, and 2, it's for personal property stuff. Yeah.
Oh, so you have to cheat.
Okay, I've never done it from this side. It's a good view. I sat down, I got here early tonight, so to figure it out. So I'm speaking on behalf of myself, Jeff Bender. I'm a property owner on East River Street. Doing this in the public to start off my request to the Public Utility District to consider abandoning easements on my 2 parcels, addresses 10017 East River and 10037 East River Street. And we've got some easements from AT&T and the PUD on that, and this is my formal request to ask for those easement abandonments. And I can be available at any time to provide further information from staff for this process. To clean these up is the goal. Thank you.
That's denied, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. There.
Well done.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and go into director update. Kim, you want to start us off?
Of course, I'm like, catch my eye, Jeff. You know I like to do this. I always like to take this opportunity to thank all of our staff for all the hard work that they've done, keeping the lights on, keeping the water flowing, keeping the administration going, accepting payments, reconciling them, and everything. So I do want to let you know how much I appreciate that. The other thing is, it's funny, as I look at the American flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, last month I missed the meeting because I was actually in Italy for an international competition with the Winter World Masters Games. And we had the American flag out there, and it's just warms my heart when I'm able to be out in the international community representing the United States in a positive manner in the sports realm. So it was really fun. There were athletes from all over the world, Norway and Czech Republic and Finland and Italy and all places. And so it's just a very fun opportunity to get together with the international community. But I'm happy to see us pledge our allegiance to our American flag. So that's one thing. And then the last item that I had is I snuck in, and when I was reading the board package, I noticed that Chuck Philman retired. So I don't know if you're going to be going over that, but I just wanted to say congratulations to Chuck. He definitely had a lot of years here, and it's just, I'm so happy for him, and I wish him luck in the future.
All right. Tony, have any updates?
No updates, and thank you for representing our country.
Joe?
Hey, I ditto half of what Kim said. The first part, thank you for the staff. We've done pretty good so far this year with a couple of little storms we've had, so I'm glad to hear. That's good.
Nice.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Thank you, President.
Krista Finn?
I
Any
do.
updates?
Yeah, thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody. It's always a pleasure, this part of the meeting. And I just brought some little tidbits to share with the public and each other. Good news on sort of the clean energy revolution from not just our little area or our state or our country, but the whole world. So, for example, clean energy was the top driver of China's economic growth in 2023. We're not doing this alone. The whole world is helping, coming together. 25% of new car sales in China were 100% electric last year in 2023. Iceland, always coming back to Iceland, they're obviously cutting edge, and plus they're sitting on top of geothermal energy like to power the world. But they're using that geothermal energy to help farmers grow food year-round above the Arctic Circle. More than 1,000 new EV charging stations have come alive in the United States just since this summer. U.S. grid-scale storage projects. Installations they set a new record in Q2 of 2023, adding 5,597 megawatt hours of storage to the grid. That is a 170% growth quarter over quarter in 2023. It's amazing. And that comes from Wood Mackenzie and the American Clean Power Association. And India is kickstarting its offshore wind sector with a new offshore wind lease of 4 gigawatts of wind turbines and another 1 gigawatt subsidized energy investment. So we are in a race right now. We are getting very close to the 1.5 degree warming that was outlined in our last Paris, et cetera, all those things, all those acronyms. But we're not alone in this race. Everybody is on board, working towards it. We're not alone doing this, and I just want to keep us focused on this commitment that we're making to our community and to the rest of the world. So thank you for indulging my information this evening. I look forward to our integrated resource plan.
Yes. Thank you. All right, that's it for director update, and now we have department updates.
Good evening, President Bender, members of the board, members of the community. I'm Jared Carpenter, the Electric Utility Director. So for our department update for electric, just want to focus on that power outage we had. I meant to go grab the cable, but I kind of forgot over there. It's in the room. But so back on January 10th, we had a power outage up on Donner Lake Road, sort of near our Donner Lake substation. It took place at about 5:45 p.m. It took out the Tahoe Donner substation and the Donner Lake substation, which essentially is all of Tahoe Donner and essentially all of Donner Lake. So next slide, please. So you can kind of see it there on those two poles. Those are the two spans. The cable, the one on the left is easier to see it, but the cable hanging down, the guys are going there to fix it. It was where a transmission line literally snapped in two. So we'll show you another picture in the end. It's in a very precarious location, basically on the side of a cliff in snowy conditions. This is when the snow finally died down, but they were working through the snow as well. Just made for an easier image of a picture when the snow was stopping. But to get up there and repair that, it was just in a difficult location. Next slide, please. Yeah, so then on that one to the left there, you see them fixing it, repairing what's going back up there. But on the right, that's the actual cable falling on it. But still, we are looking into making some changes in our designs, adding a few things to do our best to ensure it doesn't happen again. But it's also the first one of these we've had break in 50 years. So it happens. And it did cause an outage that lasted about a total of 8 hours, mostly because repairing that little piece of line was kind of complicated, especially in the middle of a blizzard. But that's our update for this month. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, President Bender and members of the public. My name is Chad Reed. I'm the Water Utility Director. So to start off with, I'd like to just start off with, we're about 8% below if we compare 23 to 24. So we only have the 1 month, so we can say year to date, we're about 8% below, but it is only one date. So let's just be valid or be transparent in that. However, we'd like to talk about what are some of the things that are going on in water right now. Excuse me. On the left here, we have the list of the the capital improvement plan and the projects that we're going to be doing. This year, we have slated about $4.9 million. Since it is the second month of the year, we thought it was quite impressive that we've already bid or awarded roughly 49% of those projects. So it's something that we're very proud of. We're on par to finish finish the plan for this year and keep going down that path. The pictures on the right, though, I'd like to just take a second and talk a little bit about that. What we're seeing here is valve replacement. Valve replacement is extremely important. And a lot of times we get the question, why are we doing this? What's going on? We did not have any unscheduled outages last month. However, if we did, when we go through and do these valve replacements, the number of affected customers is severely less. This is why we're so vigilant in what we're doing there. But I'd like to also talk about the person that we see in that picture, the gentleman that's in that picture. This past year, we were able to partner with Truckee High School, and we have a program because as so many different industries are impacted or they just do not have the workforce that's out there, we were able to go out with Truckee High School and advertise collectively, and they were able to get to a whole different group of people than what we typically do for our summer help. This is one of our summer helpers. Collectively, we were able to put together this group of people and interview them and go through the process, and it was very amazing to see this program work firsthand. And I'd just like to take 2 seconds here really fast and talk about this individual. After working with us and learning a vast amount of knowledge about the water industry, he has since gone on to take his first distribution test. He's on his path down this as a career choice. It was something that really made me excited to get to work with Truckee High School this past year. It is a program that I stand full-heartedly behind. I'm anxious to do it again next year. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, directors, community. So, next slide. These items for the updates, go ahead and go next slide, thanks. These are already in the packet, but I wanted to call out a couple of these. The first one is we're working on our digital mobile radio improvements. That's not a survey of our area, that's just a representation of what a survey might look like. We use the radio system out in the field. The crews do the water and electric when doing like switching orders or other such things like that. We've had some complaints about coverage areas and stuff, so it's important that we kind of reevaluate what's going on here. So we spent some time having a company come out and do a survey for us, going around town. It's been a few days. They've put together a survey showing us where our coverage is good, where it's not good, and we will be moving forward with engaging with stakeholders here on what the next steps are moving forward to make those improvements. The good thing is we also have other backup available to us. We've moved the crew's cellular services over to AT&T FirstNet, which is a a service specifically for first responders and other personnel such like that. We were able to get on that as well. What that does is it guarantees us connectivity in when there's times of congestion or whatnot. So they have that available to them as well. Next slide, please. And then on this slide, I wanted to call out real quick the working with the community partners for this TNT Tech Teens. And what this is, it's a workshop model that's happening in the end of April, beginning of May, where the community agencies have gotten together and are working with the high school students at Truckee and North Tahoe on information technology type stuff in their fields, right? And so it's an endeavor that is I want to read the objective real quick just so you get the idea. This month-long series led by local industry leaders will expose Truckee North Tahoe high school students to a variety of technology sectors, highlighting their practical applications in different operations. The goal is to inspire and prepare them for diverse opportunities in our region. This initiative not only benefits students, but also organizations by boosting community engagement, building connections with potential future talent, and nurturing a workforce adept in various modern skills. And the agencies are Truckee Tahoe Airport District, Town of Truckee, Tahoe Forest Health System, ourselves, Truckee Donner Public Utility District, and the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District. So there's going to be 5 different workshops that they will go to the different agencies, engage with us on the technologies that we have here, giving them an opportunity to see what we do and hopefully get them involved in our fields.
Good evening, President Bender, members of the board, and community. I am Jillian Stewart, the HR and Risk Director here at the district. And tonight, I just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of items from the HR and Risk Department update. Pictures. Each month, we recognize staff members through our peer-nominated core values recognition program. Those team members receive a certificate, a lunch with their supervisor, picture, which is Zach's up there now, that goes into our Connections newsletter, and a write-up sharing why they were chosen for that month. So I plan to bring this monthly to the board so you can help us celebrate our team. So last month, apprentice lineman Zach Myers was our core value winner for accountability. Zach's peers and supervisors wanted to recognize him for his consistency in being accountable to his daily tasks as an apprentice, which sets the whole crew up for the success out on the job site. His willingness to admit and learn from mistakes on his way to becoming a journeyman lineman, and his comfort in asking questions to be sure he understands correct and safe work practices all make him a great selection for the Accountability Award last month. And lastly, I have a few other team announcements I wanted to share with the board. On January 26th, as Kim mentioned, Director Harris mentioned, electrician Chuck Philman retired after 44 long years in the career, and the last 10 being with us here at the district. Jared and the team thoroughly picked his brain for all his 10 years of knowledge. We wished him well with a celebratory breakfast, and tonight we wanted to publicly thank him for his hard work and dedication to the district. On January 29th, we welcomed 2 new additions to the district. Sean McMahon joined us as our new electric engineer, and Haley Robles joined as a customer service representative. And then we had 2 internal promotions in the IT department. Trey Griffin was promoted to Senior Network and Systems Administrator, and Pano Valkanis to Business Intelligence Architect, new role for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our department updates.
Got it. Great, thanks.
That was nice.
Get back to the agenda here. Hang on one sec. Okay, that takes us to the consent calendar tonight, and with Brian's request earlier, we're going to pull and actually remove consent calendar number 8. So we've got 2 items on the consent, 9 and 10. And is there any public comment on the consent calendar tonight? 9 and 10, not 8. Okay. Hearing none, seeing none. Any comments or questions from the directors?
I am going to basically let you guys know, I'm going to abstain from the vote on the Porter-Simon item, which I think is number 9. So I don't know if we need to pull it, so I can vote differently than you, or if I can just do it as part of the approval of the consent calendar, and I would abstain from that vote.
Okay, I guess we could just pull it, right? Or Steve, what do you recommend to stay legal?
You can pull it if you want and vote separately, and if you do, I will step out of the room and recuse myself because that request in number 9 is from me. So,
Okay.
If you want to pull it, that's fine, you don't have to, but if you do, please let me know and give me
Oh,
permission
okay.
to leave the room.
And if we don't, we can just make a motion and then you can,
Well, yeah, I'll just abstain from that one item.
Okay. okay,
The other.
Yeah, let's do it that way.
okay.
Let's not pull the thing.
Right, no pulling. Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Guerra,
Yes.
Director Harris,
I am going to abstain from item 9, but I will approve item 10.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Action items. Here we go. Number 11, consideration of approval to award the district pipeline replacement 2024 construction contract. All right.
Good evening. This is action item 11, award of the district pipeline replacement 2024 construction contract. The district strategic plan identified 5 board goals to achieve the district's mission statement. The first goal identified is to manage for financial stability and resiliency. And within this goal, the district has identified an annual pipeline replacement projects as a high priority. Each year, the district identifies and prioritizes water pipeline replacement projects to reduce water loss and ensure infrastructure reliability. The prioritization of pipeline replacement projects are typically based on the following criteria: pipe that is in poor condition and requires repeated repairs, aging pipes approaching the end of their useful life cycle, and undersized pipe that does not meet current construction standards, which is typically 4-inch in diameter and smaller. So the pipeline replacement for 2024 entails about 5,900 feet of main at 3 locations on Northwood Boulevard in the Tahoe Donner area. The project was structured in 2 parts: a base bid consisting of about 4,800 feet of main and an additive alternate consisting of an additional 1,100 feet of main. And we structured it in this manner to try to ensure that we could handle the project within our anticipated budget. And we'll get into that a little bit further, but we were a little unsure on where the market was going in terms of bids, so we were trying to play it safe. And so the town of Truckee will be repaving the Northwoods Boulevard Loop during the summer of 2025. And we've coordinated with the town so that we can get this pipeline replacement work done this coming summer ahead of the town's repaving work, and hopefully we won't have to dig up the road to replace a bunch of rotten pipe right after they repave it. And just for everyone's information, they are planning to repave the Northwood slope from the flashing red down to Donner Pass Road this coming summer. So the three segments are outlined here on the map. The base bid consists of the two segments that are shown in red, and the additive alternate is shown in green. The bid opening was held on January 24th. 7 bids were received. In terms of the base bid, they ranged from about 2.3 million up to 3.6 million. And when we include the additive alternate, the low was just under 3 million with a high of almost 4.7 million. Our apparent low bidder was Hanson Brothers of Grass Valley. We had one bid which was considered non-responsive. That was from Resource Development, and they had, failed to acknowledge addendum number 1 in their bid submittal. We do have some related contracts for this construction project. Construction inspection with Construction Materials Engineers, which was just approved on the consent calendar this evening. We're estimating that cost at about $125,000. We have a small amount of environmental review, which we'll be using Inland Ecosystems for about $5,000. And we have geotechnical testing with NV5. We're estimating that at about $60,000. And that was approved by the board with the annual procurement process back in December of 2023. In terms of the fiscal impact, pipeline replacement projects are a core component of the 10-year Water Department Capital Improvement Program. The 2024 budget included $1.95 million for pipeline replacement. That was based on an estimate of 3,500 feet of pipe at about $556 per foot. For this year, we are obviously looking at more pipe. We are recommending that we move forward with the additive alternate as well, which puts us at about 5,900 feet of pipe, so significantly more pipe than we had originally budgeted. And we're recommending that we do that additional pipe because the town is going to be repaving the road. The budget also included $338,000 for new pipeline construction. That's rate-funded work. However, that work has been moved off into a future year, so those funds are available to us this year for this pipeline replacement project. So we're looking at an overall cost of about $3.4 million, about $3.25 related to the construction contract, $190,000 for those other costs that we outlined before. We have available within the budget right now $2.28 million, and we have the need for an additional $1.155 million. So the Water Department had an operating reserve fund balance of $7.7 million as of December 31st, 2022. And that was $2.1 million greater than the minimum balance required per district policy. The operating reserve fund balance for the end of fiscal year 2023 is also forecast to be more than $2 million greater than the minimum balance. So sufficient funds are available to cover this additional expenditure for the project. You know, we have put together a detailed schedule. Assuming the board approves the item this evening, we'll start having those discussions with them in terms of when they anticipate moving in. But given the location, I would be thinking late May.
Yeah, as I can remember back, these, I call them patchworks, but we had a time when we were really battling that Tahoe Donner area. I mean, every street had a leak. You drive up there and you can see the water running across the street. And so I'm glad that we're getting on this, and You keep an eye on everything for us, that's great. Thank you.
Right on.
Thanks, Joe.
Nice.
Krista.
It's nice to be last because everybody said what I would say. So, yeah, I'm glad to see coordination with the town. That's always a good thing. And the best time to put new pipe in the ground is the present. So I'm glad we are making these investments in our infrastructure. And we will have fire flows ready.
Yes. Ready, just in case.
Thank you.
So 2.9 million. Had to do the math.
Almost.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, excellent. All for the investment and getting the extra bid alternate for this one. So I think we've got a lot of positive
Yeah.
thoughts from the board. Is there a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Second, the motion.
Oh,
Joe beat me.
no, you got it, Joe. You got it.
I'm louder again.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
President Bender?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you. Oh, that takes us to action item number 12, consideration of resolution 2024-01, authorizing the execution of lot line adjustments to district-owned properties within Truckee River Regional.
Lease to Park and Rec, or Rec and Park, and some of these lot line adjustments are offering a couple, multiple benefits for both the library and the public agencies involved. So here's an image. The one on the right is the blue perimeter parcels are owned by the district. The red one is owned by Rec and Park, and the one that's not outlined, there's also TSD involved as well. But I'll focus on the district's lot line adjustments with Rec and Park. And so here's the existing parcels. Once this project is completed, the parcels, and this is not exactly to scale, it's just basically kind of conceptual here, but the formal documents will be filed to execute the lot line adjustments. But you can see in red, the resultant parcels is a parcel that can accommodate the new library. And also, I want to point out that the adjustments make sure that the property shift is equal. So both agencies end up with equal property ownership at the end. So the original parcels and the resultant parcels end up in the net same square footage or acreage at the end of this project. And so there's a couple of benefits here, and I have some bullets after this, but one of the real benefits here is there's an opportunity for a single parcel for the library project. And it provides opportunity for really the project to move forward, but also funding and ownership into the future. And so you really can't have a project overlying multiple parcels. It doesn't really, not conducive to a successful project. The other thing is it really helps clean up some of the legacy lot lines. You can see some of the facilities there in part of the picture. They're currently overlying that yellow line is the existing parcel. And so it helps clean up all of the parcels for future property management. If future projects want to be constructed or future land swaps or whatever it might be, now we have clean parcels that aren't encumbered partially by facilities and don't have access. Or kind of the previous parcels were landlocked and these new ones aren't. So in collaborative effort led by Friends of the Library, the three public agencies with ownership in the parcels, we've identified an opportunity to execute a lot line adjustment offering multiple benefits that I just mentioned. To facilitate the proposed adjustments, the district entered into a professional services contract with Sage Land Surveying back in December of '22. The scope of work was to conduct the property line surveys, complete legal descriptions, and submittal of all necessary documentation. The cost for that surveying and lot line adjustments was shared between the district and the Friends of the Library. New information and update, this land surveying project has been completed. All the necessary survey work, legal descriptions, and documentations have been completed. Next steps will include finalizing the applications and execution of the legal documents. for each of the associated lot line adjustments. In order to execute all of this, the placer title needs board authorization and designation of authority to the general manager by formal resolution in order to execute final documentation. So that's the resolution that's before you this evening. There's no direct fiscal impact with this particular item. All of the contracts have already been executed with the surveying group. So the recommendation this evening from staff is to adopt Resolution 2024-01, authorizing the execution of lot line adjustments between properties owned by the Truckee Donner Public Utility District, Truckee Donner Recreation and Park District, and Truckee Sanitary District. And happy to answer any questions that you might have. I have the resolution. If you don't have it in front of you, President Bender, I can bring it up on the screen, or it was included in the staff report.
Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, any public input tonight on lot line adjustments for the library?
So, good evening, President Bender, board, staff, and community members. My name is Louise Zabriskie, and I am president of the Friends of the Truckee Library. And with me are Kathleen Egan, board member, Mike Rogers, board member, and our campaign director for the new library, April Cole. Well, I've been with this for a number of years, certainly more than a few that Manager Brian Wright referred to. We're here tonight to thank the PUD for their incredible support for the number of years that we've been working on this library. And it's been a big task. I think I've been working on it for about 8 years, but the PUD has always been there, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, with their steadfast support. And it's really helped us, it's helped this project move to where it is today. Kath?
Sure. It's great to listen and to hear about your involvement in so many things, this being one, but also, as you recall, when you, in the downtown park went in, I was so overwhelmed by your involvement in that and actually getting some things moving with a donation of some funding in order to deal with some of the work. I think it had to do with the water system. Really, that kind of partnership is great. And then to hear today what you're doing with the high school students is really, really exciting. And this is something that Brian has talked with us about as far as the future library, the kinds of things that we can do with the whole notion of growing your own and exposing people within the community to career opportunities that exist for really good jobs right here. That kind of involvement on the part of the PUD is really extraordinary, and I just really want to acknowledge that. We really appreciate your leadership in partnering with us on this particular puzzle piece of a very complicated jigsaw puzzle we have with the library. And this particular puzzle piece with regard to the lot line adjustments is a very important one. And you guys were there foursquare with us right from the beginning to contract with Sage Survey, share some of the costs for doing that. And we are really close to getting it all done. This is one piece of it. Another piece of it is going to be coming up in front of the Sanitary District, their board meeting this month. And then we're hopeful also that it will come before the Recreation and Park District at their board meeting this February also. So we hope that we will have this piece of the puzzle dealt with. That's exciting because we've achieved several milestones. You may have read that the town and the county have jointly signed a memorandum of understanding. Excuse me, not a memorandum of understanding between the town, the county, and the Friends of the Truckee Library in our commitment to be working together to move this library forward. And then they've also created a joint powers authority between the town and the county, where they will work on financing, constructing, and owning the library building on this particular site. So that's a huge milestone for us. And the second milestone that's almost done is we have identified an architectural firm to work on the design and the engineering. That's another milestone we've achieved. The contract still needs to be crafted and everything else with the county. But we are really moving forward, and we want to thank you for your involvement and helping us in that process. It gives us courage, gives us energy, and we're going to keep moving on it. This is inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Bender, members of the board and staff. First, just want to introduce myself. My name is Sven Leff. I'm the general manager of the Rec and Park District. And I want to thank you for years of partnership and working together, things that go back so historically, even as the leases that constitute, regional park and what it means to this community. Wanted to secondly, just thank you guys for the role and the leadership that the PUD has taken over the last few years with this project and with others. I enjoy working with Brian and the team as far as how things are moving forward for this library project. And then third, just to assure you and Kath, yes, in about 2 weeks at our February 22 board meeting, we likewise anticipate bringing the same resolution forward to our board for action on this lot line adjustment. And of course, down the road, that will affect, kind of redefining our leases between them two. But right now, this major step is this month of February. And so looking forward to keep moving the project forward together. It's nice to meet you guys. Thank you. And I'm here if there's questions as you deliberate.
All right. That looks like about it for public comment. Thank you. Where did I start? Oh.
You can start
Hey,
with
I'm looking that way. Christopher, library.
Yeah, I'm happy to start this one. I'm very excited about having a new library at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I think if we can all continue to work together successfully, that we can make that happen. And I look forward to continuing to support this community asset that you guys are working really hard to bring into being. It's hard work, so I appreciate everything you guys are doing to benefit this community. So, thank you.
Joe, any comments?
The only thing is, are these property lines set now, today? Or do we have to work on them yet?
The surveying work has been done for the adjustments. Once we get the proper authority and approval from each of the respective boards, we can submit the paperwork for finalization of that. So they haven't been finalized. The surveying and planning and legal descriptions have been made. We just need to finalize it and record them.
That's what I wanted to find out.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. My favorite topics tonight. Thank you. I just want to take a couple of minutes because this is really timely, because today at my work, it came up that our general manager and Director of Parks and Recreation were talking to all of our staff about a recent process we went through to try and get some momentum on a rec center in Tahoe City. And it didn't go as good as they'd hoped. I think it was about a 50% approval rating based on the statistics that were done on the polling that was done. So, but someone asked a question from our staff: how did Truckee pull it off? And so I sat in the background for a bit, and it came to me, and then I thought about this agenda item, and Truckee pulled it off because of people like you out there who stand for this community, who, we incorporated this community in 1993. We embraced change. We embraced development. We embraced this place we call Truckee as a community, and it takes fabric. And that fabric is out here in the audience today. So I just really want to say thank you for your energy and your time. We wish we could do more as a water and electric agency, but we have our roles in the community, but we're happy to try and fill the gaps where we can. But it really comes down to the energy that you guys put in every day on things that are tough. A library in this day and age, tough. But you guys are slowly pulling it off in a very positive way. So I really want to say thank you. And I'm happy to support this resolution tonight.
Great, excellent.
Yes, and being the last one, I agree with what everybody has said. And working at the other agency, who's working with Tony's agency on this new rec center, it's difficult to deliver the entire thing all at once, and you just have to take baby steps towards each item. And it's just nice to see you guys, keep you're going to persevere and just keep taking your baby steps. And I'm happy to have the Truckee Donner PUD offer these lot line adjustments to, take that one little baby step. So you're that much farther along. So with that, can I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-01, authorizing the execution of lot line adjustments between properties owned by Truckee Donner Public Utility District, Truckee Donner Recreation and Park District, and Truckee Sanitary District?
I'll second that.
Hey, we got a motion and a second. Heck, yes. One piece out of a 10,000-piece puzzle, so I think. Sarah, could we get roll call, please?
Director Aguirre,
I didn't second it, but yes. Yes.
Director Harris,
Yes.
Director Laliotis.
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Okay. A lot of library, yeah. Okay, awesome. Now we're going to jump into item number 13. Our first workshop tonight is the Facilities Master Plan Progress Update.
Thank you, President Bender, board members, and community. My name is Brian Yon, General Services Manager, here at the Truckee Donner PUD. And this is agenda item number 13, the Truckee Donner PUD Draft Facilities Master Plan Progress Update. We are here tonight to share with you a high-level recap of the district's efforts in developing a facilities master plan in coordination with JK Architecture and Engineering. Chris Vicencio, partner with the firm, and Andrew Todd, Senior Project Manager, are here tonight representing JK Architecture and Engineering. Tonight's workshop will start with a little history of district planning prior to 2019, and then Andrew will provide an update on the processes in developing the TDPUD draft facilities master plan to date. What is a facilities master plan? A facility master plan is a long-range planning document often developed to provide a roadmap for anticipating growth and the changing needs of an organization. This offers guidance for planning and preparing to upgrade, improve, and expand facilities to accommodate the organization's needs now and in the future. Part of any facility master plan is an in-depth analysis of current properties and facilities to consider how they accommodate current operations, as well as identify opportunities to address changing needs and future growth. This draft addresses the support systems of the PUD and excludes utility infrastructure facilities. The electric and water utilities have separate master plan documents to provide guidance for the utility infrastructure components. Truckee Donner PUD owns several properties with the main headquarters, this property, currently hosting a majority of the district staff, operations, and support services functions. The corporation yard located at 11270 Trails End Road offers outside storage for vehicles, trailers, equipment, and materials. Excuse me. In 2004, Gaunt Sommer Design was retained to prepare the Truckee Donner PUD Corporation Yard Program and Master Plan Report. The report was presented to the board at a workshop in August of 2005. The 2005 master plan process included environmental review and geotechnical investigation. There are currently 3 adjacent parcels owned by the PUD at the end of Trails End Road. And within one of the parcels, the Corporation Yard, the Red Rock Quarry site, and the 6170 tank site are located. In 2006, a lot line adjustment was performed, and 2 of the parcels were declared surplus by the board at that time and marketed for sale. The properties never sold and are currently still owned by the district or by the PUD. This slide offers an image. It might be a little hard to see, and those lot lines are a little askew. This slide offers an image of the Corp Yard, Red Rock Quarry, and 6170 tank site parcel. Over many years, the Corp Yard area of the property has been modified to accommodate the outdoor storage needs where vehicles, trailers, equipment, and materials are stored. On December 5th, 2018, a board workshop was held regarding the need for an electric operations building separate from the main headquarters location. Two potential sites were discussed, and the board of directors provided direction to staff that a proposed electric operations building was to be located at the Corporation Yard property. (2018) future vision. The 2005 Corporation Yard Master Plan considered all the district storage and warehousing needs, along with other support functions such as field staff operations, vehicle maintenance. All of that was considered as of 2005. It included a conceptual layout with 6 structures proposed, none of which were ever built. Recognizing the significant changes to district needs and operational philosophies since 2005, it was determined the overall Corporation Yard Master Plan should be reevaluated and updated. Staff felt that the Corporation Yard Master Plan update, preparation, it was all beyond the expertise and the availability of district staff. So staff prepared an RFP seeking professional consulting services to prepare a facilities master plan. Excuse me. The RFP was issued on February 8th, 2019. 4 proposals were received. A staff committee review determined that the proposal submitted by JK Architecture and Engineering was the most advantageous to the district. And subsequently, the board approved staff's recommendation to execute an agreement with JK Architecture and Engineering at the June 5th, 2019 Board of Director meeting. Andrew Todd, who is has been the senior project manager on the project from JK Architecture and Engineering, is here with us tonight. And I'd like to introduce Andrew, and he will provide an update of the processes of the development of the draft Truckee Donner PUD Facility Master Plan in its current form. Andrew?
Thank you very much. Directors, staff, and community, thank you for this opportunity to go through the history of this master plan process. So what we have here, we just have can you go back one slide, please? So this is the This is the team that worked on the master plan together. JKE, we're an integrated architecture firm, so we have structural and civil services. And then we worked with Stantec, they are facility and logistics specialists. Local engineering firm, they did the electrical engineering and low voltage assessments. Seed did the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then cost estimating was done by Sierra West. Okay. So, so the process of creating this master plan took almost a year. So we started in July of 2019 and we presented our draft in the May of 2020. During that time, we immersed ourselves in the culture and operations of the district. We worked closely with Neil Kaufman at the time, and we really embedded ourselves and really tried to understand what the needs were and how the district operated. The end result of this was a 400-page facilities master plan with many appendices, and and this master plan was broken down into 10 chapters. And tonight I'm going to go through each of the chapters and kind of talk about the processes and what the chapters mean. So next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back? I should hit the first two. So the first chapter was the executive summary. So we kind of went over the team introduction. We go through the process overview, and that flow chart you see up on the right is sort of the process of getting through to the draft, sort of the different stages of data collection, communication, input, draft responses. The second part of the chapter is project overview, where we looked at all the sites, we looked at the sort of site elements, and we listed at a sort of a very large scale some of the assets and deficiencies. Next, please. And then with the whole project team, what we do is we do a existing conditions assessment. Not only do we looked at all three sites, but we observed the sites from a sort of it's really important for the master plan for you to understand what your assets are, because your assets are what you have in hand, and that's what your greatest strength is. So how can we capitalize on what your assets are? So we look at the assets and we view them from a maintenance standpoint, from a code standpoint, and we create a general report on the sort of state of affairs. And that state of affairs was one of the appendixes, Appendix E in the master plan itself. Also part of the existing conditions assessment, that's where we get to know the different programs or operations within the district. And that listing of programs you see is identify core programs. Those are all the targeted programs that we looked at that were part of the master plan assessment. So during this conditions assessment, we sat down, we interviewed leadership and staff, and we got an understanding of how and why operations function. We also took that opportunity to do an accounting of not only the sizing and space of the program areas, but also the equipment associated with those program areas. Next slide, please. And then from that, we develop a basis of design. And the basis of design is more of a personnel driven, and it's also kind of understanding needs. So in that previous slide, the conditions assessment, we get an idea, what are the existing assets, how they work, what are the sizes of things, what are the quantities. And then in our basis of design, we go through those identified program areas, and we ask each department sort of what do you need in your offices? What do you need in your support space? What do you need for storage? What do you need in the shop? So what we're doing, we're just collecting all this data, okay? So we're understanding the critical elements and function of each program and area. Next slide, please. And so from that, we basically have all this data, and basically we kind of have the game pieces for understanding what we are now, and this master plan looked into 20 years in the future, so for 2040. So how are the programs, how are the departments evolving? What do we see what our needs are going to be in the future? So for every single department, we put together the space needs program. So this is just basically all the data and the sort of playing pieces. When we get to the planning stages, we know the sizes and quantities that we want to be looking at for future growth and development. Next, please. And so, in addition to sort of the space needs program, also wanted to mention as part of that the facilities condition assessment, there was also questionnaires that are handed out to all the staff. And so not only we have the data from the space, but we also have our interviews, but we also get our questionnaire. So we're getting all this information in. And then in this room, on this wall, for 3 days, we put down in scale different plans or ideas for how do you want to see growth. And then we worked with the staff, at all levels of staff, and then we came down, at the end of the 3 days, we had 2 concepts for the master plan. Next slide. So we came out with 2 concepts, and we're going to get, and those are discussed in Chapter 9, and we're going to get to those in 2 slides. But as part of that, in Chapter 7, Stantec did a traffic mitigation study where we looked at what the effects are on Donner Pass Road for the 2 concepts. So this is just an idea of what that graphic looked like. Next slide, please. We understand emergency operations and redundancy are absolutely critical to maintaining continuity and function of the district. So in this chapter, we sort of addressed that requirement with the 2 different concept schemes. Next, please. So over here, so right now I'll talk about, in this chapter, we'll just kind of go over these 2 master plan options. So one option was like a 2-campus option, and this is option 1. So, and the other option is the sort of singular campus option. So in this 2-campus option, what we envisioned is having electric operations, vehicle maintenance, and warehouse over at the trails end site, so at the Corp Yard. This project and this would be phased over time. We have phase 1 and phase 2. And one of the things that with this Corp Yard site, just some of the challenges is that the site is quite steep. The access roads to the site would be a challenge. Trails End Road is congested, and so there was the discussion of putting in a new road from the north from the water tower, and then upgrading the road that goes out and over Trout Creek. The zoning for this area it does not support this level of growth. We'll talk about our discussions with planning. At the time in 2020, it was conceivable, but we'll address that later. But there is challenge with zoning at this site. Next slide, please. So coming back to the split campus, so staying with the split campus idea, coming to where we are right now, water operations, maintenance, and administration and customer service would be here. Part of this concept idea was, right now the site is really impacted with vehicle circulation. So the idea with sort of to alleviate that is to use the Meadow Way connection, which is right now is a power easement, I believe, and creating a new road through there. So some of the challenges with this site is our snow storage, the sort of integration and the upgrades to the existing administration and office building, having to work in the phasing and then having a temporary home for water operations, constrained vehicle circulation, and then sort of conversion of the warehouse to water operations. Next slide, please. So this sort of E3 option 2 concept was the idea of having a very large main campus, and then the courtyard becoming, just having only material storage and a building for, it was called skeleton operations, which is basically in the event of an emergency, just having a redundancy control center there. So then we come down to the Donner Pass Road campus, and all of a sudden we have all the departments located on this site. So it's a fully consolidated operations. Some of the program challenges are the increased traffic on Donner Pass Road, the complexity of the phasing. There would have to be some land swap with, because the district would be taking over a portion of Meadow Park, so that would be phase 1 and phase 2 in this diagram. We still have the Meadow Way connection, and there's the integration and renovation of the entire facilities to support a reconfigured operations program. There would be site congestion, and there would obviously, with the increased density on the site, there would be some noise concerns. So we, as part of the master plan, you know, one of the critical components is understanding, okay, what are the costs associated with this? And so for the two schemes, we ran a cost estimate in 2019. Now, as we've discussed earlier, there's been, you know, great escalation. This was before the pandemic, and so these figures are just placeholders in time. And also one of the things which is just interesting to consider, especially, you know, how things have evolved so quickly. The building code in this has changed in the 2022 building code. It's not 2023, that's a misprint. There's requirements now for photovoltaics, battery storage, and, you know, and there's electrical vehicle charging. And that sort of infrastructure was not considered part of the master plan at the time, believe it or not. So we did present both schemes, and we had a informal meeting with the planning department to give them an idea of, hey, these are some concepts that the district is considering. At the time, they said, well, that's very interesting because we're in the process of developing a general plan. And that's old news for us now. But we discussed the zoning and land use, excuse me, and we just discussed the different options, and they had a slight preference for the two-campus option. So that's sort of the conclusion of the sort of master plan overview.
Yeah, and so Andrew touched on it a little bit, but the Town of Truckee Town Council approved the Truckee 2040 General Plan in 2023. This was not considered during the original draft facilities master plan creation. Included within the Truckee 2040 General Plan is the interest for the town to partner with the district and Nevada County on possible suitable relocation sites outside of the Gateway District, meaning this section of Donner Pass Road. That's the current, currently the location that we're sitting at, right here at the district main headquarters. In conclusion, there's really no direct fiscal impact associated with this informational workshop. But in summary, the current draft facilities master plan is a culmination of a collaboration with JK Architecture and Engineering to produce a nearly 400-page draft document. I'll turn the presentation over to General Manager Brian Wright to share possible next steps for how to proceed and open the discussion with the board where we can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
So real quick, just wanted to take an opportunity to frame the discussion this evening and kind of what staff is looking for in terms of feedback and direction. So this facilities master plan, as you've seen in the presentation, began during the tenure of former General Manager Michael Hawley. Upon his retirement, it was put on pause for a few years. We're kind of reevaluating it, reexamining it, bringing life back to it. And in doing so, as the presentation offered, some conditions have changed. And so what we're looking for this evening is some feedback and direction from the board on next steps. And a couple of things to consider. Brian mentioned the 2040 general plan update. And in that general plan is a directive to the town staff to collaborate with the PUD in particular and finding opportunities to relocate off Donner Pass Road. And during the assessment of the facilities, the assets we have and some of the challenges, ingress and egress continues to be a real challenge on this property, particularly since the town updated Donner Pass Road, the beautification project, the Envision DPR with the islands and sidewalks. We quite frequently experience traffic congestion right here in front of our particular facility that makes it challenging for staff to exit and return. We're challenged with coverage storage and facilities for parking new vehicles. These are, fairly costly investments in new technologies and equipment. We're challenged with some of the staffing locations, the available space for staffing. And so what you've seen here, kind of the updated, or where we're at with the facilities master plan, is considering two options, the single campus or dual campus. Some of the challenges of a dual campus, you kind of separate the organization, and it's not that one utility concept. It's kind of a satellite office on both ends of town. Even the other location has its own challenges in terms of how to fit everything in those parcels, and how the ingress and egress continue to be a problem with Trails End and Bridge Street. So what we're looking for this evening, there's a lot of discussions in the community. In particular, I sit on one of the steering committees for the River Revitalization Project, where they're looking for landing sites to relocate some businesses and entities off of River Street to other locations. There's a desire to move the PUD in a different location. There's discussions with the viability and approval of land use out by TTSA, Jorger Drive. We have facilities already located out there by the bus barn. There's other lands that are for sale in our community that might be more conducive to a single location and really address the needs of the district. You've heard in staff discussions, reserve funds being developed for future buildings and future construction. One of the considerations is to continue to engage with JK and fully develop this draft plan using the properties we have, or take opportunities to look and partner with the town and other public agencies.
You can't see what's coming to the left. It's just like, and I'm just, I only get here once or twice a month, everybody feels have to do it every day. So yeah, I think I am open to, the third option, which would be moving the whole thing kit and caboodle somewhere else. However, I think we need assurances that can be done in a way that is financially responsible, that is not going to continue to hit roadblocks, even though we get assurances that we can do these things. I mean, we've had this happen already, that yes, but then the reality is no. Then you get, it's very frustrating. This has been a frustrating evolution. So I would not want to say yes and go full bore to anything without having a real, clear, defined, dependable path forward. I mean, Lord knows we'd all love to be on the river, right? But, do we need to be on the river? I don't know.
Well, they're planning on a courtyard. They were converting the courtyard to a park now, so we could just throw a grenade in that plan. No,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Let's throw grenades, because that's the most fun.
I missed a couple of meetings somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm open to the exploration of sites.
Right, going beyond what's.
Going
yeah.
beyond the divided campus, the revitalization of this campus.
Yeah, the divided campus doesn't sit well. Just, you're dividing the whole district. I don't know, it's a team.
Yeah, I think together is better. I do think we're better together in one
Right,
place.
right.
Everything in one property?
Our preference from a staffing and operations standpoint would to have one campus. The divided campus, the divided campus presents some other challenges, really in logistics and staff, collaboration and operations. The harsh reality of it is that we have limitations in terms of development of this parcel further. We have just the sheer size of it is challenging. The accessibility, as was pointed out in the master plan. And then, the building was constructed before town incorporation, and there's new requirements. The building is technically in legal noncompliance with code, so it presents some, we've already experienced that with the remodeling project that we were considering a couple years ago. And so I would like to add that, the way this gets done is through public partnerships and collaboration to address the very concerns that District Vice President Finn brought up. Is the only way this really works is through collaboration with several agencies, including Truckee Workforce Housing Agency, the town, other property owners. And what we're looking for this evening is kind of what I'm starting to hear is at least support of evaluating the options. The absent of that evaluation of other options, we would ask for consideration to continue forth with one of the existing proposals with the two properties, recognizing all the challenges that are there as well. And so obviously cost will always be a paramount concern with this. I think that can be mitigated to some extent with partnerships in, either property trading, property selling. All those are things that we can consider. We'll come back clearly and give updates to the board as each of those kind of opportunities are more fully explored.
Okay, when we first started this conversation about putting the duplicate information in this building, over there, another building, we didn't say anything about staffing it or anything, but we could, if something happened to this building, we could just open the doors and have the information at the other end. And that courtyard was big enough for at least that. And that was the main thing, was have the duplicate information, so we don't want it all in the same place. We gotta have it separate someplace. And I think we ought to stay, we should move from here unless we're forced to, and I don't think that we're gonna be forced to. And this would be this is a perfect location for this PUD right now. I would say, right in the middle of town and on the main drag and everything. And I don't think that we ought to start land swapping or looking for any more land. I think that we've got the 3 parcels, and I think that you mentioned the airport parcel is one. And even if you put it in 3 locations, I mean, we're close enough that it's not like miles away, it's just down the street. And we can use the airport, some of the airport. I don't know how much property we have left over there with the tanks there. But then the courtyard, I think we still have enough to move the information that we have from this building over there in another building. So we can just, if something happens here, we can just transfer there and still operate. And we start land swapping and everything. That's gonna double the budget. If you start moving people out of their properties and buying properties and swapping properties, we didn't want to get this so much out of the budget that we couldn't do it. I mean, we have to stop somewhere and say, okay, the way we started, I thought was pretty good idea. I think put a couple buildings there at the courtyard and use the property that we have. And that's not that far, but it is separate from this one. And that's what we wanted to do. So I don't know, this option 2, it looked like there'd be like 90% of the properties would be there, and then 10% would be the courtyard. That's what that looked like to me, and the buildings are all right in a cluster. I thought we had enough land at the courtyard that we could do what we did, what we talked about originally. So I don't think that we ought to get into land swapping or anything. I think we ought to see, modify this program here. Instead of 2 parcels away, I think that we would have enough over here at the courtyard, 2 parcels. But I didn't know how many buildings we're gonna put on it. I don't know if we have enough room for everything, but I think we have enough room with what we wanted to do in the first place. So that's my story.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you very much for the presentation. It definitely, opens our eyes to what the situation is. In my opinion, is this a nice to have? Is it a need to have? I mean, are we going to get red tagged tomorrow and we have to find someplace for everybody? Or is it something that, somebody's just like, oh, I kind of like this street without the PUD there, so let's like move along that line. I'm not with that. I mean, these are our customers, and we are part of the community. And as much as I would, ideally, it is difficult to pull out, and it's probably to a point where they may need to put a roundabout, where the bank is, or, somewhere for the access for our trucks to get in and out easier. But I mean, if you're asking what should we do, if it's something that it's like we have to have more of a decision and direction, we have a couple directions, we don't really like them, I would just kind of step back and, I don't know, let it simmer or let it marinate, and maybe revisit it in 6 months or a year. But I don't. That's kind of my thought, is just to let it sit.
Well, I think, we as a board did ask for the continued facilities master plan. I remember the electric operations building coming back, and then I remember, Tony, you mentioning it, and that kind of, I don't remember the date of that, but.
Back in 2018, the board authorized the district to pursue assessments of new electric facilities.
Yeah.
And those were driven by a couple motivations. One is we needed kind of contained and covered storage for inventory of expensive and critical materials, transformers, equipment, vehicles. Those are still challenges we have to date. We also need to consider the advanced clean fleet regulations that are going to require us to have zero-emission vehicles in 2027 and beyond. The ability to create those facilities here or in the other parcels we own. And then kind of the life cycle of this building. We're engaging in kind of maintenance repairs to sustain it, and we can continue that, but we'd have to reevaluate some of the remodeling efforts to be in compliance with town code.
Well, remember, we tried to remodel.
That's what I'm saying.
And we got denied for any exterior remodeling. Why? Because of the 2040 general plan. So we're basically stuck with the exterior of what we got right now for as long as we're here, be it 10, 20, 30, 40 more years. This is the original bill. I'm just, stating, we tried to do an upgrade, and then that was shut down. And so I feel like we really, I mean, the facilities plan it's done, right? This 400-page document, and it just has a few updates for the code, and it has these options in it.
Yeah, we have a draft version. We need to finalize that, and we can bring that in front of the board, provide it to the board for review. And in that facilities master plan is the results of the study, the assessments, the needs assessments of the organization. If the board's feedback and direction for staff is to continue and finalize that project, re-engage with JK to finish that project, and bring back to the board as a final document, we can do that. Or we can, evaluate some of the other options that are presented before us since that project began.
That's what I was talking about, swimming against the current with the town, as far as what we can do in this space,
Yeah.
if they tip their hat against us, it's rough, and it's expensive, and it takes time, and it takes money. And we do have, I'm glad Brian brought it up, because I was going to, is that we actually do have evolving needs here. Like, we have a clean fleets rule that we have to abide by, which means all of our vehicles are going to be electric, which means they're going to need charging stations, which means they're going to need power, which we're not equipped right now to do. So we do have things that's, evolving needs that we need to consider. The future is not as clear to us now as it was to us 10 years ago, apparently. So, I think there are still a lot of moving parts to this, and I'm not willing to shut the door on any of the options yet.
Well, right, I really like what, Tony always likes to hang our hat on rate studies, on studies, and we're not done yet with this plan. So my feeling is, how can we make any solid decisions without having a solidified final plan? And we don't know what we need if we don't know what we need. We've asked all the questions, JKA asked the questions, it's in this document, we need to plan for 2040. I just don't want to stick my head in the sand and kick the can down the road. We're digging in deep with water projects, we're digging in deep with electric projects, and here's our two departments, and then here's the main facility, right above that, where everyone works in this district. So, and what are those needs of everyone here and who work here during the day, and what does it look like in 2040? I want to know that. And Tony, you constantly bring that up with, we gotta have to hang our hat on these studies of knowing what we need.
What we really, being really clear, and what we have access, what we can
Correct.
do
The
also.
first thing that we started on was the emergency. Something happens here, we would just transfer the office to the other office.
Right, but Joe,
That was our first.
right, and which now we can't just think about emergencies, there's,
Correct.
It's a 400-page document, so
Yeah,
there's,
that's right.
that's
I
just
know.
like one little chapter in there, we gotta address it, but I wanna make sure we look at it as a whole, and we continue and finish the master plan so we know what to build, so we can provide the immediate needs for storing electrical equipment that's extremely expensive, long lead times,
Yeah,
we're buying it early, so.
It's real
another-
expensive to duplicate what we have here in
Right.
another building. Just think of
yeah.
the computers we gotta get.
I think in a perfect world, yes, we'd love to be in one space, one happy space. I really don't think this property is the answer to that equation. But, let's be clear, there are plenty of operations around this town and as well as other areas that operate on multiple campuses, and they can operate efficiently and effectively just as well. So, I do want to be open to considering looking at a single campus facility, but, Krista, you used the word responsible, and I think that's a good word. And I'm going to use the word realistic. And Kim, you used, the term, do we really need it? Is it something we really need? Is it a want? Is it a need? Those are all really valuable, approaches to looking at this. I think I think we have a good plan. It has I consider two options, really. I think it's worth going down the road a little bit further on this single campus option. There are a lot of question marks, but I think it's important to also be open and collaborative, to at least get to the point where we know whether we can answer those questions. Is it a want? Is it a need? Is it responsible? Is it the right thing for our ratepayers to invest in? And we're not there yet. So I don't really, I do want to pivot and talk about more of the single campus option. Just looking at what JK presented tonight, a single campus option here is really scary. And I don't think I think it's going in the wrong direction, in my opinion, on this property itself. But I also think we have very viable financial solutions to have facilities on existing properties that we own that we can create a very functional and responsible environment for both our staff and operations and our ratepayers.
I remember we were gonna do something about the parking here, even for the employees. So we bought that little property over here from Breezy, the corner right here where the street ends.
Oh.
And that, we were gonna use that. Now, are we still using that for parking for the employees or anything?
If you're referring to the dirt lot, kind of to the back,
Your lot right there at the end of the corner of the
yeah,
property.
we use that for some equipment storage, but it's in large part kind of designated for our snow storage. As you mentioned, parking is an extremely challenging effort here on our facilities. We have very limited parking for staff and the public, and that will become more of a challenge with the requirements for EV chargers.
Any problems if we do tonight with that little property? I mean, we went on and on and on, what are we gonna do? And finally Breezy decided to sell it to us. I think we bought it for $25,000 or something.
Those were the days.
And that's just that empty lot up there. And now I'm glad we're using it for storage at least.
Yeah, it's our major snow storage spot.
I think it's got 10 times, 100 times bigger than just an empty lot for parking. So, we'll see what's gonna happen. And I'm with you, Kim. Let it simmer a little bit, and see what happens. And we haven't decided on one area, one parcel. Have we?
Well, so if you let it simmer, that, to me, that says stop working on the project.
Well, it's already been how many years since we started this?
We began in 2018, so it was a 2018 and 19 project.
About 5 years then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think JK has presented
I'm glad to see it on the board again. I mean, I'm
No,
glad
I
to see
think
that.
JK has presented a good option for a dual campus situation. And I think the question that staff is asking us tonight is there any appetite to look at alternatives to that, which would be most likely a single campus somewhere else that doesn't exist and we don't own.
That's right.
And as I said, I'm willing to be collaborative and continue down the path of working with the town and the partners at looking at potential opportunities. And, sort of, I think for me, this let it simmer part is I think we got a good viable option for a two-campus, facility, and I think that's where, and I'm comfortable with that. But we have a very loosely defined third option that I think needs a little more work. So it's kind of where I stand. So I support staff continuing to go down the path of working with the community partners and trying to see if there are options for a single campus.
Andrew, if it's one campus, about how much land would you need?
I'd have to look at,
Acres?
I'd have to look at what we have for our single campus option. I just don't know off the top of my head. But
I think it's larger than 5 acres, though.
Yeah.
We'd have to give you the,
Exactly.
we could get you the numbers.
Okay, that would be a lot of land swapping for a parcel 5 acres big in this area. The cemetery's been looking for a parcel to put the cemetery.
Let's not move on top of the cemetery. That's a mistake, always.
And it's 5 acres. It's 5 acres
It's
and
always a
it's
bad move.
almost full.
Our single campus option is a little bit more than double this existing footprint right now, though. Yeah.
But we start swapping, like, moving businesses off of East River Street and stuff, you'll have one strip of land there. And you still won't have enough room to put one facility with what we want to do.
Well, that was a joke.
Oh, I see.
That was a joke.
Yeah.
We don't even
Well,
own that.
Tony
Yeah.
keeps talking about one campus, but
One campus somewhere else of property, yeah, so Brian mentioned, out by TSD, and the bus station out on Georgia Road,
yeah,
yeah,
thought that way.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
I think Tony summed up where I fall as well, so.
So, yeah, I guess, at some point, staff can bring back recommendations and sort of a work plan of where you see the needs to get to that option a little bit further down the road. But at the end of the day, it's just, we need to evaluate it like anything else we do here. Is it realistic, responsible, financially viable option? So, and we would do the same with the two-campus
Yeah, all of
option
the
too.
options.
So, but I think obviously we have a plan, somewhat of a plan laid out for that option. But so I don't know. Maybe Brian, you guys can come back with some ideas of how to further the single campus option to get more clarity, so that we can start comparing the two projects.
Absolutely. I think we have the feedback that we were looking for this evening. We kind of expect staff to bring back an item to continue to engage with JK Architecture to incorporate some of the new requirements and needs. They mentioned EV charging, solar energy efficiency projects, some of the parking needs, but also continue to explore some of the other single campus options to bring back to the board for consideration. We won't get too far down the line with that, but definitely come back with kind of an out-of-the-box third option here.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. There's a lot of work that went into that,
Yep, there is.
400 pages.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Whoops. Okay, workshop item number 14, PID, Plan and Communication Strategy. All right, thank you all.
Is that better?
Thank you.
I don't have quite the reach that Brian Yon does. Bring that in. Good evening, President Bender, members of the board. I'm Alex Spihalski. I'm the communications specialist here. And Stephen Poncelay couldn't be here in person tonight, but he is on Zoom.
Hey, there he is.
And we'll be presenting the 2024 Public Information Department Plan and Communications Strategy. I promise I will not take as much time as I did last month, but we do have some things we want to keep you all updated on, what we're going to be doing in the communications world this coming year. So this should look a little bit familiar, sound a little bit familiar. We did this around this time last year, right? In 2023. The Public Information Department, we updated our plan, and that work started in 2022, and really what that comprised of is revisiting our communication strategy, revamping our themes, and creating some new communications campaigns for us to strategically organize how we communicate with the community. That was a fantastic cross-departmental effort. We had a working group with 7 staff members from all different departments. We worked through the themes and how we approach our community when it comes to communications. And the conclusion that we came to was that we needed a customer-first approach to our outreach, and something that prioritized the needs of our customers and made sure that we were relating what we did to their everyday lives so that people want to pay attention to us and want to learn about what we do. So we presented that plan to you in February. We implemented it throughout the year. Last month, you heard a very lengthy recap from me, and part of that was covering how that communications plan, came across throughout the year. And now we are going to briefly touch on what we have in store for 2024. We'll be talking about our priorities and focuses as a district and how that will fit into new and ongoing campaigns in the coming year. So just to start, I'm going to go ahead and throw up our Public Information Department vision and goals, and I'll leave this here for a second for you to read, just to remind you what we talked about last year. And for our department, it really boils down to making sure that the community knows who we are and how the work we do affects them and their daily lives, and in turn promoting engagement with the district among our customers. Also, a quick refresher from last year, we talked a little bit about our strategy and how we plan campaigns and what campaigns are. So a campaign is a deliberate marketing plan built around a topic that we want to communicate to the public. So we choose our campaigns based on the district's biggest priorities and goals of the year. This is where we're able to get more specific, right? We talked about themes, I'll get to that in a second, but this is really us taking a look at the year to come, taking a look at what's important for us to get across, and creating a bit of a roadmap for how we can make sure that our community is up to speed on what we're doing. These are, as I said, specific topics, and also there's a outcome that we're working towards. There's something that we want the community to take away from the work that we put into these campaigns. And as another refresher, here's our PUD themes. If you'll remember last year, in contrast to the campaigns, that's more focused topics. These are those broad buckets. It really serves to illustrate who we are as a company. Everything we do does relate back to this, but it's really a lot more generalized and more of a foundation than the more specific campaigns. Give everybody a second to read those over if you haven't seen them in a moment. So for 2023, these were our campaigns. Hopefully these look a little bit familiar to you. What you're going to see this year is we've identified 10 campaigns. I'm going to talk about them in 2 different ways. But if you'll see, if you kind of take a quick look at this list, we're going to move over to 2024, what we call evergreen campaigns. A lot of those words, all of those words you saw on the previous slide. So when I talk about what we mean by evergreen is something that's not timely, it's something that's always going to be relevant. So these topics are really core to who we are and what we do. These are never going to expire. We're always going to be talking about these every single year. So they're still, we're making the point to still put them there in our 2024 campaigns. It's important to call them out. The projects that live under those campaigns are going to change. You know, your money at work, the capital improvement projects for 2024 are not going to be the same for 2023, but still that's a message we're getting across. And then I'm going to spend more time here on our timely campaigns. And what I mean by timely is these are the ones that are very relevant to what's going to be happening in 2024 with the district. So this is the bulk of the update here. So I'm going to take a little second and go through these and kind of talk them through with you. So first up, we have energy sources and clean energy. So the topic of where we get our energy from. It's pretty dense, pretty complicated, and we'd like to help our customers navigate and understand that topic better. It's coming up a lot more. I think there's a lot of interest generally in clean energy especially, and where people want to know the source of where that energy comes from. So we'll be able to touch on different resources, explain what they are, both ones that are currently in use by us and ones that we'll be exploring. And, RPS, our Renewable Portfolio Standard, and also why we are pursuing clean energy. Responsible water usage, this was on our 2023 campaigns. However, we really didn't get to it last year because of the snowfall that we had. If you have a historic winter, nobody's going to want to listen to you when you talk about how you really need to conserve water. It's a precious resource when there's, still snowbanks on the side of the road in May. However, things look a little bit different this year, so this will be an important topic for us this coming year, especially due to there is new water conservation legislation coming down the pipeline, and we really need to get our customers ready for what the new reality will be for water consumption in the state. So we'll be focusing on that this summer. Next up is our integrated resource planning and your role. So you're going to hear about the IRP, obviously, when I finish up here. But this is really about explaining to customers the demands on our system in the coming years and how we're planning for the future and that anticipated load growth, but also educating them on their role in helping us maintain our infrastructure and our capacity. So a couple of the projects we're going to be talking about there, some energy efficiency programs, the time of use rate, community solar. There's going to be a lot to talk about on that topic. I think probably the base level of knowledge among that topic is probably pretty low among most of the community. So there'll be a lot of groundwork there in explaining these really complex topics. And something I missed before on one of the previous slides is it's not only what we talk about, it's also the order that we talk about it when we're talking about these campaigns. So there's a lot of things that fall under this umbrella. And like we said, this is a complex industry. We can't start talking about step number 3 before we've talked about step number 1. We got to lay the groundwork. So it's the order of operations kind of how we present this information to the community so that it makes sense and people want to keep learning from us. Next up, drink, tap, and pristine water quality. This is going to be a fun one. We're actually going to be partnering with the town of Truckee and Keep Truckee Green on a joint, not to use the phrase that's already in rotation, drink Tahoe tap, but kind of something similar to promote the water we have up here. So we all know that we have fantastic, high-quality drinking water up here, and we really want our residents and our visitors also to know that. So the town has aspirations to move the community away from bottled water, and kind of the first step to doing that is to let everybody know how good the tap water is here, and that's our role. We really want to, flex what we have and what we do here in this building. So that's going to be a fun one we're going to be working on over the course of the year. And then, of course, the updated strategic initiative. So we all spent a lot of time on this last year. You adopted these updated initiatives. They're up on the board here. We're all very familiar. So after all that work that was done in determining those, we're going to make sure to educate the community on what that means. And then additionally, it's not, the campaigns is really what you'll see us, the content, what you'll see us talking about. But part of our role also is how that information is disseminated, the channels that we use, the infrastructure that we have. So some of the communications projects to set ourselves up for delivering that message, we're going to have a couple new things this year. We've heard from the community, they want more education. We think it's because we've done a pretty good job in raising the awareness of who the PUD is, what we do, we're out in the community. Now they want to know more. So it's a good problem to have. The biggest thing there is, we need to make sure we're delivering that information in a way that people will actually receive it. So strengthening our website use, having more frequent featured articles there, using our customer email platform, delivering newsletters, taking all that information and repackaging it in many different ways to get people where they are, however they consume their information. And our lobby digital signage will be a huge project for us this year. Taking a look at our website, that's a really important touchstone that we have with our customers. And we really want to make sure, number one, that the content that's on that website, it's relevant, it's up to date, it makes sense, it's what people want to know. But also that people can navigate the website in a way that makes sense and they can find that information, right? There's nothing more frustrating than going to a website, you have a question you want answered and you just can't find the answer. So really taking a little bit of time and evaluating our website. Is it serving the customers? Is it serving us? And finding ways to make sure that's performing the best that it can. We also want to delve more into an area of outreach that we began to explore last year, especially around our community circles, and that's how to better engage and reach our Spanish-speaking populations in town. And then we're also going to be working on some internal tools like brand guidelines just to ensure consistency, logo use, the way we look as an organization, make sure that we have some consistency across all departments and internal, external, things like that. And just some tools to facilitate ease of transfer of materials among all the departments, like asset libraries, things on our shared drives that nobody has to come to me when they need a picture of something. They can just find it themselves on the shared drive. So a couple of projects we're going to be working on this year as far as delivery of those communications. So the costs for the district's Public Information and Strategic Affairs Department are included in the approved 24 budget. There's no direct fiscal impact associated with this informational workshop. And the recommendation is to receive this informational workshop and provide input and direction to staff.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any public input on Public Information Department workshop plan? Okay. No public input. All right. Kim, any comments on the PID plan?
Sure, I'll start out. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think having the information out there is always a good thing, and I know a challenge for public agencies is to ensure that we have the bare minimum of what is required, like the single button for the board agenda. And I know HR has the salaries that, link that is important to have. So those types of things, integrating that into the new website, obviously you'll be taking those into consideration. With the newsletter, you're looking to just do an email newsletter to everybody?
Yeah, I think that a great way. Right now, I think we're underutilizing our customer emails. There's a lot of, the most frequent way they're used is direct having to do with your account. When I get into it, it's PSOM, it's kind of bigger things, and we really need to not be reserving that channel as something like, oh, we only use it for really big stuff. If we can do a quarterly newsletter where we're just a little bit of a recap of what happened and a little bit of looking into the future and just linking to stuff on the website, that's just that's how I see it, at least in an email format to our all customer email list would be a great way to just deliver information more frequently in a contact that we already have. And when the community was surveyed a couple of years ago, they ranked email very high in their the channel that they would most like to be communicated with.
Great. No, communication's good. Thank you.
No, thank you for the presentation. I think the success of last year's plan was pretty evident in the summary you gave us last month. So I like to see that we're going to continue that momentum and build upon it. So I think I felt really good about last year's plan. I think it played out very well this year, this past year, and I think I look forward to, your continued refinements and improvements. So, thank you.
Joe?
I
What do you
think they
got?
got enough information there to start a war. I don't know what to add to what you have up there. It looked like you've covered everything pretty good, and you still are. And looking for us to give you some ideas, but I think that you got it under control.
Thank you.
You bet.
I also think you have it under control. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Stephen. Communication is vital. It's hard to do it effectively to the community and within the organization. So I'm very happy to see us elevating this aspect of what the PUD does. I think you all have been very successful, and I'm excited to see what this year brings as well. So thank you for putting this together for us and keeping us up to date. Thank you.
Oh, I got another thing here. I was in one of these meetings when we first started this, and I mentioned bill stuffers. And that, the person, the ratepayer will get the information in their bill, and probably one sheet, folded in three, fits in the envelope, and give them the information.
So the only obstacle there is we have moved to paperless billing.
Pardon?
The only obstacle there is that we have moved to paperless billing. So currently, if you want a paper bill mailed to you, you actually have to opt in to that, if I believe that's accurate.
You're not gonna get a bill in the mail anymore?
Unless you had gone through the process and requested we moved everybody automatically over to paperless billing in November of 2022. Is that?
If you desire to continue to receive paper bills, you can.
Yeah.
And so if you're receiving paper bills now, you'll continue to receive them.
How am I gonna get my notice?
That's something, I just wrote that down as feedback for folks who don't rely primarily on email, a bill stuffer or some other format, something we need to consider there. So thank you for that feedback.
I'm not one of those email guys.
Got to bring everybody.
We'll make sure not to
So I
forget
want
that
paper.
contingency.
Good.
Great, excellent. Nice to have an update. Short and sweet this time, focused on 2024, touch on what you did in '23. So thank you, a lot of work, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right. All right, thanks. Okay, I think we got a big one up here next, huh? This one's a 550-page, no. Integrated resource plan.
President Bender, would you like to take a break before this presentation? Or do you want us to continue forward?
Do you want to take,
Is this 15?
take 5, Joe, take 10?
Yeah. but
We do-
Are we gonna go into 15? Is that the-
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
We do have our consultants online waiting, but we can definitely take a 5-minute break or so.
okay, yeah. All right, let's do that, please.
Okay,
Little break.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Okay, are we all set? Back in session?
Back in session. Item 15, the IRP. Take it away.
All right. Good evening, President Bender, members of the board, members of the community. So this presentation tonight is on our IRP, Integrated Resources Plan. So this, as a little background, this started last year or so when everyone here embarked on a project to come up with a plan to meet our resources of our power supply and other facets that come with it, which can include energy efficiency and planning, just all the nuances of what comes with providing energy nowadays. So we hired a company, Aspen, and also Flynn RCI to help us with this plan. For a very light background, just as a reminder, an IRP is often used by utilities. It's actually required by utilities that are using above 200 megawatts to submit it to the state, where they're showing their plan of how they're meeting power supply and then updating every few years. We're not required, this is voluntary, but it kind of sets a path for how we get to where we want to get to. As a slight reminder, of course, the overall law of California as stands now is to comply with 100% non-carbon emitting energy sources by 2045. So that is the end goal, and there are milestones along the way of RPS, of renewable energy procurement that are required to meet, which we are doing fine with, but those things, they don't stay fine if you don't make changes, and you certainly don't grow if you don't make other changes. So how do you plan those things? That's the point of the plan. So tonight, this workshop is really to explain the findings. Aspen will be going through this. Any feedback, any comments, any questions, any ideas, it'd be a great time to tell us along the way here, and certainly in the end, maybe even along the way. That way we'll come back at a very near future board meeting and then ask for adoption of our IRP. Aspen really wanted to be here. They were planning to be here. Chain control, weather stopped that. I'm extremely confident there are many members of the public who wanted to be here too for this. I thought when I first came in, they were all here for this, but you know, Super Bowl prep, snow, I'm not sure. Oh, good, we can see them online there, excellent. So we have Katie, Pushkar, and Joe in order on the top of the screen. Katie, can you hear us okay? And if you say something, we can make sure we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, excellent, thank you.
Excellent. All right, shall I take it away?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, directors, and whoever from the public is there or is listening to us. We know that you've waited a really long time for this IRP, your first ever IRP. We know that we don't have 400 pages for you. On the other hand, if you gave us a chance, we might. But that probably would not be very efficient for you. We're going to try to make this is really complicated subject matter, and we're going to do our darndest to simplify it so that it's easier to understand. But we're not going to simplify all of it because we think it's important you understand that it's complex. When I think about, and I'm going to just talk for a couple minutes here and set the stage, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues, Joe Long and Pushkar Wago. And then at the end, they'll come back to me and I'll try to do a wrap up. What I think about in terms of, when I think about an IRP, to me, what it represents is an opportunity for a conversation. It's an opportunity for a conversation about where you are, about what your future might look like in terms of demand, what your supply situation looks like, your electricity supply situation looks like, what kinds of objectives you need to meet around it, such as regulatory compliance, such as desires from the community, such as the need to try to keep to be fiscally responsible, et cetera, et cetera. This is a place to try to meld together your hopes and dreams with those needs and realities. And this is kind of the way you do it. Next slide. Hopefully we're on slide 3. I can't see the slides as they roll through. Oh, there we go. Go on to the next one, Jared, if you would. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to give you an overview of the load forecast. That's a critical component of the integrated resource plan. That's what makes it integrated. We're going to talk about the power contracts you have in place now. We're going to talk about resource options and supply resource options. What supplies could you assemble that would meet your demand? And what are the characteristics or attributes of those in terms of cost, in terms of reliability, in terms of compliance, meeting clean energy goals? And then we've got a sensitivity analysis that has my favorite diagram, a tornado diagram, that lets you look at uncertainty around the various assumptions that we've made. Because, the first thing you know when you do a forecast is that it's wrong. So we use the sensitivity analysis to test that. The last thing I'm going to mention, next slide, Jared. The last thing I'm going to mention is kind of a wave a red flag. The IRP for you is an inflection point. The market is also at a very important inflection point. And this inflection point is one where there's increased competition for supply. And those supplies right now are limited. Demand for supply is increasing because of not only economic growth and population growth, normal economic growth, population growth, but because of additional demand created by data centers that are popping up not just in Silicon Valley, but all over the place. And then the drive or the impetus to move away from fossil fuels, not just for electricity generation, but all end uses, including my furnace, for example. And so that means turning to electricity to meet that heat demand, and that means higher electricity demand. You've also got, combined with that, near-term limited availability of resources across the West. In other words, lots of people, we're all facing these constraints or these new demand requirements, but it's very hard to get resources built, whether we're talking renewables, whether we're talking which kind of renewables, whether we're talking geothermal, gas-fired, whatever it may be, it's very hard to get it built. The other element that you need to keep your eye on as you look in that rear view mirror or that forward view mirror is that we're seeing more and more extreme weather events. And demand skyrockets in these adverse extreme weather events. So we just actually saw just a couple of weeks ago a cold period in the Pacific Northwest where electricity prices at Mid-Columbia hit $900 per megawatt hour. There was also a problem with the gas pipeline storage facility on top of that, and everybody made it through, even with, there were requirements for conservation for Seattle City Light, Portland General Electric, and other utilities, Avista in the Pacific Northwest, but fortunately no load shed had to occur. At the same time, so you've got that inflection point on supply, and at the same time, you're in this really unique position, not only because you're Truckee, which alone makes you special, but you're a water utility on top of an electric utility. You're on the east side of the Sierra, and that connects you to NV Energy. So you've got some lower cost transmission. You can still participate in the energy imbalance market. And the big uncertainty in the West overall is what kind of region-wide electricity market is going to be created. Either a bunch of us are going to go join the Southwest Power Pool in Markets Plus and create that kind of broad market, or the CalISO is going to expand. It's going to be one or the other, and almost one of those is certainly going to happen, but we don't know when, and we don't know how it will come together. With that, let me be quiet. Joe Long's going to take you through the demand forecast, and then Pushkar's going to take you through the resource modeling, the really complicated resource modeling. And then at the end, I'll come back and wrap up. So take it away, Joe.
Good, thank you, Katie. I'll try to keep it upbeat as we go into the nitty gritty of the demand side of the IRP equation. So to start, we began by estimating the baseline energy demand forecast, which grows at about 2.1% per year. The annual trend is informed by Truckee's historical load growth, as well as electric meter starts in recent years. The baseline energy demand forecast is actually built using Truckee's own hourly interval meter data to model hourly, daily, and monthly load profiles by customer class. We refer to this as an 8760 forecast because it estimates demand for every single hour of the given year. The detailed level of granularity is nice because it allows us to look at the intraday swings in peak demand, as well as seasonal fluctuations between the summer and winter tourist seasons, for example. The customer classes are then aggregated to estimate the total energy requirement, and then we use that to compare against the resource portfolios. Well, before we do that, we then modify the baseline forecast by adding load modifiers, which include things like electrical vehicle charging, rooftop and commercial rooftop solar, energy efficiency or EE, and electrification to arrive at the load forecast scenarios. Each load modifier is forecasted separately, and we apply a bunch of different levers and adjustments to change demand as we go from mid to low to high sensitivity scenarios. Each load modifier is also forecasted on an hourly basis to capture the impact on the total electricity demand for the peak, for example. One other example would be solar production. So solar production in the summer can displace some of the demand in the middle of the day. Whereas with increased electric vehicle adoption, we would see increased charging demand from customers overnight. And so we can capture those kind of different changes over the course of the day. This directly affects the resource portfolio as we need a supply stack that can meet demand at all hours of the day and essentially keep the lights on, as was mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So for the IRP, we produce 3 sensitivity cases, including a mid, low, and high scenario. The forecasted total electricity demand ranges from 226 to 270 gigawatt hours in 2040, and the peak in the winter goes from 44 megawatts to 52 megawatts by 2040, depending on the demand scenario. In each case, demand varies due to sensitivities around the load modifiers and as well as the annual trend. So for electric vehicle charging, we have a mid, low, and high case for electric vehicle adoption, which drives our charging demand. And then we add that on top of the baseline energy forecast to arrive at the mid, low, and high. And we do that for every single load modifier. The load forecast provides sensitivities to the IRP to test resource adequacy on an hourly, seasonal, and annual basis. The load, which Pushkar will talk about later, tends to have the largest effect on the procurement cost, or at least one of the largest influences on the procurement cost, as an upward swing in demand will directly correlate to additional procurement, which is costly. You have to procure to meet that demand. And the relationship is sort of emphasized by what Katie said, where we're in the West, we're in this resource-constrained market. The opposite is also true, though. If we have a low load case where either the load growth is smaller than we expected or energy efficiency and solar production offset some of the expected demand, then we can have a large savings impact on the utility resource cost. Sort of similar to what was mentioned in the communications plan, energy efficiency is a crucial resource that, we need to communicate with the community to access. Beyond the 3 load forecast scenarios, we also developed some exploratory scenarios through conversations with Jared. We looked at heavy-duty truck charging for large, freighter-type trucks. We looked at a 100% residential electric vehicle adoption scenario and an efficient, aggressive electrification scenario, which we included in the appendix and report. Next slide, please. So drilling down deeper here, We broke out the load modifiers by month for the mid case to express some of the seasonal fluctuations in demand and how these load modifiers influence the forecast. Generally, the mid-case scenario represents a sort of business as usual forecast, and the load modifier estimates are based on policies that are currently in place. So for the first one, just to start us off here, we look at the public electric vehicle charging, which is in orange, and at the very top, and we can see two distinct peaks, one occurring in the winter and a larger, more narrow peak in the summer, which we consider to be somewhere around July 4th, 4th of July. And the public charging demand tends to follow the volume of visitor traffic in the busy seasons, which makes sense. And these peaks tend to grow throughout the forecast period as we have more adoption. We also have the residential charging demand in blue, which is more spread out throughout the year, but again, increases with market saturation of electric vehicles. Electrification in purple, and that represents fuel switching for appliances and new standards. So on the negative side of the load modifiers, we have solar generation and energy efficiency, which both have a net negative effect on the load requirement as they both displace some of the demand from the residential and commercial customers. What's notable here is we see the residential solar in gray, and we can see the generation is concentrated in the summer months and increasing in magnitude as more and more solar panels are installed. Next slide. So in developing the load forecast, we found that the IRP highlights an opportunity for the district to optimize the relationship between energy efficiency and electrification. Currently, the district is transitioning from traditional energy efficiency programs to electrification programs. We think it is crucial for the district to consider how new energy efficiency programs paired with electrification can help to mitigate some of the load growth. A combined approach will ultimately be more cost effective as it lowers the need for unnecessary additional procurement, and captures a new market for kilowatt hour savings on the energy efficiency side. More work will need to be done outside the IRP to explore potential programs and what other utilities are doing, but we imagine programs that could target efficient electrification strategies, essentially. One example would be like pairing incentives for air source heat pumps with thermostats that could optimize heating and cooling demand. The incentive for the district is that every kilowatt hour saved is a kilowatt hour that you won't have to procure. And this becomes increasingly beneficial considering the tight resource market, as Katie mentioned, and competition for specifically clean resources. So in our fourth bonus exploratory case here, we have efficient electrification, and we note that this has the highest greenhouse gas savings for the district. However, that is only true if the increased load is met with clean resources as well. The load forecast defines energy efficiency and electrification more generally to arrive at estimates for the IRP. However, it flags the need to investigate further how the district wants to optimize this double use of program funding for both energy efficiency and electrification, since they come from the same basket. There's a need to meet GHG reduction goals while also mitigating costly resource procurements from electrification where possible. And that is my speech on the load forecast detail. And now I'll hand it off to Pushkar, who will go through the resource model and the sort of supply side of things.
Thanks, Joe. This is
Pushkar?
Yes.
Hey, just to make sure, because that was a lot of information on our load forecast, looking out a long way, and plus energy efficiency targets that Joe was mentioning. If there's any comments or questions you have on that, feel free to jump in now, or you can go in the end, of course. But it goes deeper and deeper from here.
Will we have access to these slides? Because okay, great. We'll have the whole report that we can dig into.
we can provide access to these. They will also be included in the future staff reports for the final report, but we definitely provide access to these.
Thank you.
I will add in too, just as an FYI, looking at like this graph here on the public charging, the orange one, the most, I'll call it volatile, growing fastest. I would say right now, what we're seeing today, this is on track, and it might pick up. So right now, maybe the mid case, I mean, right now as in the past like 2 weeks, the mid case we might want to go with the high case. That doesn't have a huge change on your kilowatt hours, but this is not being conservative.
Right. Well, and I would say one other thing there is that, that's on a monthly basis. There's also an impact on your peak hourly load based on the public charging, because that typically, the public charging tends to be also sort of middle of the day, afternoon, is where it's concentrated because that's when people are out and about charging their vehicles. So it's not just a monthly peak, it's that hourly peak that we're looking at too.
Thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Pushkar.
All right, Jared, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is Pushkar Wagli from Clean Resource Consultants. I'm the managing consultant with Clean Resource Consultant, also known as Clean RCI. And thanks, Joe and Katie, for that background. I'm going to jump on to the integrated resource planning model, and that's what we built, which is an Excel spreadsheet based model that to track the portfolio performance and cost. The good thing about it is that we are handing over that model to you. So going forward, as things change, you should be able to change certain things and update that model. So that would be residing with you. It's being provided to you, and it has the generational load aggregated by monthly and annual level. Underlying some parts are in hourly. So as Joe was indicating earlier, it has quite a bit of granularity. It tracks, and let me apologize right in the beginning that there are a whole bunch of acronyms there. You tried to explain with the full form there, but in some cases I'll be just saying dumping a whole bunch of acronyms at you. So the first one is the RPS, the Renewable Planning Standards goals. The second one is the GHG, the Greenhouse Gas Free Energy goals. Then you need to have certain capacity requirement. You cannot just have enough resources to meet your load. You need to have some buffer. So that's your resource adequacy requirements, some sort of planning margin that you would need. And then, you have the power purchase agreement prices that you're exposed to. And as Katie rightly said, you plan for something and you know that that's not going to actually materialize. 99% chance that something else will happen. And that's why you need to model those sensitivities. And there are certain market fundamentals that drive those sensitivities, such as, you have loads and natural gas prices and hydro conditions and PPA prices and so on. So we've taken all that into consideration. Next slide, please.
One thing I'll just add in here too before we go forward there. I'm sure everyone's heard about the RPS rules and complying with green energy that has to be done. There are also greenhouse gas rules and laws too that have to be applied to. It's a separate one, and they could even advance, but we often don't talk about these much. And the RA, just for a simple way of looking at it, it's a requirement for every utility has to have amount of reserve capacity of the peak demand, basically the peak 15-minute window in the entire year has to be covered by a certain amount of energy requirements, and if you don't, there is money to pay to cover yourself. So they will get their money either way. So how we come up with these scenarios are very important financially.
Thanks, Jared. This particular slide sort of tells you what's your existing power supply, and we have sort of color-coded it. And as Jared mentioned, that's your renewables portfolio standard is one of California's key programs for advancing the renewable energy. And this program sort of sets continuously escalating renewable energy procurement requirements for the state's load-serving entities. And the generation must be procured from those RPS certified facilities. So those are basically marked in green, and then the one that is sort of in the yellowish color that you see is basically neither a GHG free eligible or RPS eligible resource, but then you have certain resources which are not really renewables, but they are GHG free, like some of those hydro resources like Central Valley Project or the waste heat recovery. And then we have also identified certain contracts that in note section that the Transjordan, we've assumed that it will expire at the end of 2024. Some other resources are also expiring and so on. So there are certain assumptions that are made in the model as far as the existing power supply is concerned. Next slide, please. And in terms of the future resources, same convention we are using in terms of the color coding, but you'll see some whole bunch of new resources. Some are like the wind resources, it's the phase 2 of the existing resource that you have, or the new Lahontan hydroelectric, that's a new resource, something similar to what you already have. And then we have also incorporated certain storage. And sort of we are pairing that storage with solar resources. So what typically happens is during the afternoon hours, you have excess solar, and that solar could be potentially used to charge battery storage during the afternoon hours when you have excess energy. In the evening time, when your load grows up, or when you don't have sufficient resources in the market or internally, then you'll use the battery storage dispatch to serve your late evening hours. So we have sort of considered those candidate resources in terms of the solar component, as well as the ones that are marked in gray are, again, they're GHG free. Your storage is sort of GHG free because it is charging using the solar generation, but it's not really RPS eligible. It's dispatched as such. And then at the bottom, you can see that just like you have the currently certain market purchases contracts, we have assumed certain new 5-year market purchases contract there. So that's how, it's a candidate, it's a menu of the future power supply resource possibilities. Next slide, please.
So just before we go on this one,
Sure.
This is a general idea of kind of the projects that we're often looking at. There are actually a lot of projects we're looking at all the time. They don't always pencil out. Sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes we don't win them. But we're always hunting them down. This gives a general idea of places where we're looking at. But the thing to take away here is, things like that. The battery project, we were here a few months ago and we were approving it. It's because we're integrating into our plan of how we meet our needs going forward. Frankly, it's not even for some good reason. It's to meet our power supply. It is required. We need it. And even if the community solar is saying 1 to 12 megawatts, it's because we know we need something. Well, we don't need it, but it'll be very helpful. So we're going to try. What's the size? It's hard to say, but we will analyze that as part of this. And Pushkar mentioned a few minutes ago, 2 slides ago, he mentioned that they've created a model. We have our own model too, but their model is actually, it's really neat because it brings in allows us more flexibility to say, let's stick a project in there to see how it affects our power supply portfolio for between now and 2045 or so. And so hopefully that gives a little context of the projects we're looking at and why we're doing some of these things.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So on this slide, we are sort of describing what's our IRP or integrated resource planning methodology is. We start with sort of examining what are the planning framework risks, identify that's the challenges you face in the current business and regulatory environment. Then we assess needs in terms of, developing a forecast for load changes, incorporating impacts of the cost-effective demand-side resources, existing contracts, contract terms, what are the operational constraints that you may have. And that number 3 is to consider the resource options. So that's what we just showed you on the earlier slide, that evaluate available generation resources, including the centralized or the community solar, some local resources that we described that will play a key role in terms of meeting your customer needs as well as the regulatory and policy goals. Number 4 is developing those resource portfolios and evaluate them quantitatively and qualitatively to determine a sort of a preferred portfolio. And that evaluation relies upon RPS as well as GHG-free requirements, what are the needs assessment, and the planning data that are specified in the earlier steps. Number 5 is to perform the scenario and the risk analysis, where we'll do some detailed evaluation of the preferred resource portfolio. Once you select a preferred resource portfolio, the question is, how does it perform under range of potential market and regulatory conditions? So that's important piece. And then the number 6 is we'll identify the recommended portfolio based on that resource portfolio and expected sort of its ability to reliably serve demand at reasonable long-term cost while achieving those regulatory compliances, accounting for those inherent risks, and also having the flexibility. We'll talk a little bit about that. You plan for something else happen along the time, and how you can be nimble in having a strategy in responding to those changes. Next slide, please. Jared, do you have anything to add here, or?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. So what we see in the next slide is sort of a recommended, by the way, this is a busy slide, but you can see that there are a whole bunch of existing. It's a combination of existing and future candidate resources. And we're basically, what we're doing is applying those 6 steps that I described earlier in the IRP methodology. And then we ask questions, looking at this portfolio, is it reliable in terms of maintaining the planning reserve margin? The reserve margin that Jared mentioned earlier, given the preconditions of market participations and so on. Question number 2, does it minimize the overall cost of procurement and manage market volatility? Question number 3 is, does it comply with states' environmental goals and policies? Number 4 is, does it comply with districts' own goals? Number 5 becomes, and you'll see some slides on that, does it include resource diversity? You don't want to be putting all your eggs in one basket. Is it diverse enough? And the other question is, does this portfolio adequately balance resources against loads on hourly basis? And that's where the granularity is very important. You might look at some monthly basis or annual basis, things look very hunky-dory, but hour by hour, what's going on? And therefore, the profile of these resources, hourly profile, is also very important. And as I said earlier, how does it perform under range of sensitivities? And also, we considered a trade-off between remote utility scale generation versus within district resource development, such as community solar and the TDPUD 4-hour storage. So that's what you see here in this slide, where menu of options, when is it starting, when is it ending in terms of certain contracts, and what's the capacity, some of the ceiling capacity that's shown to you in the last column. Next slide, please.
One thing I just want to add here,
Sure.
briefly. If we looked at every piece of what it takes to, this is how power supply is done, how we're shopping energy, this is what we're shopping for constantly. There's many variables in there that cost different things. It's not just the cost of energy. So Pushkar mentioned how do these meet your hourly needs? So every single hour of the day, even now actually down to the 15-minute window of every day going off till 2045. You can't put all your eggs into one basket, like you said. You couldn't buy all solar. You can't buy all coal. You gotta mix it up, or you will be very exposed financially. But the one thing I want to point out is the fastest growing thing today affecting Truckee's grid is the peak demand piece, the RA, the resource adequacy. There's a few names for it. And these energy imbalance markets, these EDAM markets, they're all created and they are running now. They were created a couple of years ago, not 10 years ago, but 3-4 years ago, and now they're engaged. And the prices are coming in, and they will start to climb quickly. In California, we saw a lot of this over there, and so if you spend time over there working, you can be very familiar with what's happening with them, and now they're coming into the rest of the West. And as Katie mentioned earlier about the RTO, having RTO come into play, is CAISO going to expand further east all the way to Montana, or will a new RTO be created that expands and even comes into CAISO's territory? I can basically promise you it's going to be one or the other. And high chance it won't be CAISO going that way. I think there'll be others will come in and they'll involve CAISO, and we will be involved in those. Should we get heavily involved in those? Should we try to get on the committees and the boards of those? There is no more choice. It's coming. In fact, it's already here. It isn't like they're going to be 5 years out. It's here now. That means now that it's been running, the prices will begin to rise. So the hour per day of energy becomes incredibly important because it can cost you 4 times more to buy energy at one time a day versus later in the same day.
All right, so on this slide, you see 4 pie charts. And by the way, the study period that we studied was, began in 2024 and went all the way to 2040. And so you'll see those 4 charts. One on the top 2 are the 2025 and 2030 ones, and the bottom ones are 2035 from left to right to 2040. And it includes the recommended portfolio that is meeting that resource diversity goal with a mix of intermittent solar, wind, hydro resources, some firm battery storage, geothermal, and hydro resources. So what you see over here, it shows increased reliance on renewable resources and reducing the district's reliance on natural gas-fired resources. So this significant increase in the contracted resources helps the district to transition from a net buyer in the spot market in the early years. So you see that gray part, that's positive, that's about 35%. That's where you are. But with this sort of contracting, you will see that the gray portion actually becomes negative as you move forward in 2030 onwards. And that means you have very little, from a net buyer, you become a net seller in those later years. That's what you see here. Jared, do you have anything else to add to this slide before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, let me just make sure everyone can, because the numbers are smaller on the screen. Sorry, we did our best to make it large, but it's almost so much we can do. So we're here today in 2025, and what Pushkar was saying is the purchases and the gas purchases and other purchases, they're right here, these darker grays. You look out to 2040, all of a sudden that value, which might be hard to see, it's actually negative. So it goes from a positive 35 plus 11 to negative 9.
There's a big difference just from 25 to 2030, which is a mere 5 years away. That's dramatic.
That's right. That's right. And a lot of that's driven by the market prices, the requirements, the regulation that's in place. So this is the recommended portfolio for us to run our business. And we'll get into more of the financials of that in a few minutes.
Yeah, so on this slide, again, apologize for busy slides here, but on the top side, you see how the recommended portfolio is meeting, the state policy goals. That is basically the renewable energy supply versus the RPS requirements. The solid line, the blue line that is going across, and by the way, these are, you cannot see maybe, but it's on the x-axis you see years, which are going from 2025 all the way to 2040. And that the bar chart, the stacked bar chart, are basically telling you what sort of composition. The dark one, the orange one is geothermal, the blue, light blue is hydroelectric, the light green is solar, and the orange one, the light orange one that you see, or yellowish kind of thing, that is wind resources. So basically the solid line tells you what's the RPS requirement is, and that RPS requirement is basically 60% of you need to have 60% of your energy that you have, your load has to be coming from the RPS eligible resources, and that sort of remains flat. But as you can see in the recommended portfolio, you're well above that RPS goal. The advantage of that is that if you're well above it, you have the opportunity to even sell your excess renewable energy credit, and there is value to it. So if you're short, then you'll have to buy from the market. You're long, then you can potentially sell those renewable energy credit, and that would be revenues to you. On the bottom side of the same chart, you will see the GHG requirement goal, and that kicks in about 2030 time frame, and the solid the burgundy or brown line that you see going across, that's basically your requirements, and the dotted line on top in the same color are the actual your GHG free, how you're meeting those your GHG free levels. So except for 2034, when you come really close to that, overall you're well above, but you're essentially meeting very, in flying colors, you're meeting both the RPS goal as well as the GHG free goal. And these are basically, driven by the state law, which is SB 100, which basically increased those RPS goal to 60% by 2030, as I said earlier. And it requires all states' electricity to come from carbon-free or clean resources by 2045. There is additional legislation called as SB 1020 that basically requires 90% clean energy by the end of 2035 and 95% by the end of 2040, which is what is captured there in that solid burgundy line. Any questions? Or Jared, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing I'll just make sure everyone can see, because it's small here, but just to make sure everyone can see it. This is the RPS requirement. This is the GHG requirement. We probably haven't spent a lot of time talking about this here at Truckee because it doesn't kick in until 2031 when the law, so this red line is the law we have to meet. The blue line is the RPS law. We've all heard about this one, we're doing quite well. This one might be a little bit newer for most folks hearing this. But one thing that I want to make sure everyone can see here is that's 100%, and that's 100% there, so 120 is at the top. It means at some point in time, if this is 2025 right here, and this is 2040 here, we might be used to just buying energy to meet our needs. We're heading towards a world where we're going to have to start over procuring renewable energy or clean energy, whatever different energy source, even gas, over procuring and selling in the market just to meet the law. That's a pretty big shift. So we become from an energy taker for the past many, many years to also an energy seller. It goes both directions now. And again, it's just to comply with law.
And also, let me add, it's a pretty good risk management strategy when you're sort of become a net seller than the net buyer in this environment. You want to move on the next slide? Okay.
I'll add one more thing, Pushkar, is for a point of reference here. With California, this is happening across the state of California. California has to build a substantial amount of gigawatt hours, gigawatts, whatever biggest you can imagine, huge numbers of more energy resources that are going to be, they're all going to be carbon free. Then clean energy, wind, different things. Hydro, I highly doubt it. It's just too hard to build those. It's very complicated. They were great in the 60s, but different workforce to build a dam. It's hard. Sure, more solar too, but it has less value. Geothermal would be awesome, but it's hard to build that kind of stuff. So what it means is you got to simply put, overbuild your wind. If you think you need 100, build 150%, whatever you want to call it. That way, everyone can meet the law. It's the only way to get there. So we have to overbuild and then curtail. That'll have price effects. But those price effects will also bring them down eventually too. So it will actually get cheaper at some point in time. What year? I won't bore you with my guesses, but it's the inevitable, and that's what's going to happen to us too.
All right. So far what we talked about are, how things look on an annual basis and so on, but let's look at sort of hourly granularity. And the top chart here basically showing you, December of 2040, what's going to be the situation. The bottom one shows you the August one. And we chose those 2 months because in December is one of your months where you have highest loads. And August, although the system's loads are pretty high, the summer peak typically occurs, your loads are not that high. You're sort of a net seller during that period of time. So the recommend portfolio is sort of trying to balance those resources against loads. And then you can see that they reasonably do well, especially in August, but more so in December. So during the winter months, you have the wind, battery storage, natural gas-fired generation, and spot market purchases. So those gray colors, black and gray ones, are basically not your green resources, essentially. Okay, one in the bottom that you have are some of those green resources. And when I say green, there's this RPS eligible sort of resources or GHG-free clean resources. And they play a key role in your winter months. In contrast, in August, very little natural gas-fired generation is needed to serve district loads. And the district will be mostly making a spot market purchase, a spot market and REC, the renewable energy credit that I just talked earlier about, you'll be making more of those sales during period of August. And the battery storage typically charges, as I mentioned earlier, during the early and the late morning hours when you have solar generation, and it discharges during the late evening hours when the net load, and when I say net load, that is the load demand net of solar generation is highest during the day. And that's what you'd see if you look at closely some of those storage resources, which is in the kind of a magenta kind of color or pink color, that you will see it's been charging. It is negative value in the early and middle of the day, but then it is just discharging during the evening period of time. Jared, anything to add there?
Yeah, just make sure everyone can see it clearly. What you have here is we have our December and August, and this is 24 hours. So this is taking two, call it average days in 2040. How will our business be functioning in those two-month periods with the same resources? In December, basically, that's our peaking time. We're going to need some of the black ones, which are market purchases, even some gas. We need it in the December, the winter. I said summer, sorry. In August, in the summertime, it's the same resource, but all of a sudden we don't need any more market purchases. We're going to be all covered and fine if this all goes according to plan. But we're going to be selling a lot more because we're going to be over procuring. So we use it all in December. We don't use it all in August. So again, selling every day. And you see the batteries here. You're looking at charging up during mostly daylight hours when power is actually probably dirt cheap and mostly from solar. And then discharging when it's really expensive and higher value. So this could be a very expensive time of year for us. This could be a very cheap time of year for us. And it all balances out in the year for our rates and whatnot. But, sorry, there's other sources here. I won't read them all, but there's a whole portfolio of everything we saw earlier of what comes in here. But the gray is natural gas. The black is market purchases, which again, we don't know where they're coming from. We might as well assume natural gas and not assume what we want. They could all be solar for all we know, but they're undefined. There is no definition behind them. So, good idea of what happens. And I'll also point out, when it comes to energy procurement, when I see this, what I see here is opportunity, where for Truckee, only Truckee, well, maybe a few others, but not many, where others are going to be scrambling to survive through here in the summer months, in August. We're not. Here, we're going to be scrambling, but they're on vacation, they're cruising, life is easy. So how do we take that to our advantage? You sell. You buy and you sell it. You balance it all that way. It'll definitely be a different way of doing our business, because right now, every single day we're trying to match our load forecasted every hour today with our power supply existing and buying as little as we have to from the spot market to fill it in. That will greatly change between now and the 2030, now to 2040. It's just going to naturally be shifting a lot. It'll be a really interesting challenge and a lot of fun, but it's very different than it has been for the past 10 years.
So Jared, on the market purchases, you said they're undefined. Are they always undefined, or do we eventually figure it out and apply it, or they're just always going to be undefined and really not go towards any of our standards?
They're always undefined, but come 2045, we know they're not carbon emitting, because by law, they won't be in business anymore. So this is where, like, today, if you had a coal plant today running in California, which there aren't, but let's say you did, let's say oil or gas. You're scrambling today to convert to something else. So you're either going out of business or you're trying to convert to hydrogen. That's basically it. And this is all, I'm actually one of the proponents of saying, I don't care what kind of hydrogen it is. It will be green hydrogen. It's inevitable. Because if you want to make money, it'll be green. So no point in messing around with what it is exactly today. It's going to be green no matter what, because it'll be cheaper. The undefined ones in 2040 is still there. Again, will they still be undefined in 2040? Probably, because you still can sell the RECs too. You can buy and sell RECs in that future market as well.
Thanks, Jared. So we're on slide number 17, and now we're talking about money. What's the financial impact. And the table, the way to read it, in the top is the recommended portfolio that we just went over. We call that a balanced portfolio. We call it balanced because it has tremendous, quite a bit of resource diversity. And then the question becomes, what are the other alternative portfolios that we could look at? And we have listed about 4 different additional portfolios, the additional 4 different rows. The first one is no new PPA. That is assuming that it's like business as usual, but you don't procure any additional resources and rely on market purchases for your incremental needs. The third one is basically saying that what if we don't go for the Central Valley project, hydro resource, which is the Western Area Power Administration resource, or a Stampede hydro resource, but then you have to balance it and add another additional 4 megawatt of new utility scale solar and 4-hour storage. So it's essentially balancing that, adding some more community solar and the TDPUD internal storage. So you're basically trying to compensate for not having those hydro resources with a combination of solar and storage. The third is like no storage at all, but then you need some sort of what we call in our industry a base load resource that is available for most of the time, like geothermal. And what would be the impact of that? And then you have, the last one is the high internal gens that, what if you just rely on a lot of internal resources, increase the community solar by another 10 megawatt and internal battery storage resources like 3 megawatts and so on. So add a whole bunch of additional resources if you don't have, you rely more on the internal resources. But what you see over there are the numbers in terms of dollars, and that is NPV stands for the net present value over 17 years. That's our entire study period. So rather than looking piecemeal annual one by one, this one number sort of gives you a flavor of what is the overall cost to you and we have assumed 5% discount factor, and you can see the recommended portfolio has about $201.5 million in 2024 dollars, and then what you have is the no new PPA is clearly more expensive than it because you're now relying on more market purchases and so on, which is a lot of uncertainty built in. So that is clearly the least cost effective. The third one looks pretty good. It even looks better than our recommended portfolio. But the question becomes, would you be able to procure that much of additional geothermal resource? I think it would be pretty challenging to procure the level of geothermal that we are talking about in the recommended portfolio itself. So the question is, would you be able to, procure and contract with additional geothermal resources? If you can, then that's the way to go. That's described by that third portfolio. And you want to make sure that, clearly we'll show you later on that you get into trouble in the no new PPA or NNP portfolio as far as your state policy goals are concerned. But then you could meet the state policy goals in the other portfolio. So we are trying to make sure that you're meeting your resource adequacy goals as well as your GHG goals. That's all I had on this slide. You want to add anything, Jared?
Yeah, just to be clear, this one, so this is one of those ones where, let's say we stopped trying to buy a lot of energy and we just kind of didn't make that a high priority. We just kind of cruised and focused on whatever business we have to focus on. It's going to cost it's going to be $30 million more. $229 million are the second one. That's why we have to keep doing it. This is not the first time this has gone through this. This happened actually in early 2000s to the energy crisis. Same thing where you got to keep finding these things. The cheapest one on there, the high geothermal, that's a function of if we can find it. But everyone's going after those same ones. So it's a bit of a race. But if any of the utilities listen to this, we're not going after more geothermal.
Yeah, next slide. Okay, great. Thanks, Jared. And you can see that the recommended portfolio here that we are showing, and there are 3 metrics that we are looking at. You have contracted PRM. That PRM stands for Planning Reserve Margin. And you have to be typically it's 15% reserve margin. So ideally you should be greater than or equal to 115% in that first row. The second one is the contracted RPS. And we just saw from the earlier slide that the recommended portfolio does really well in meeting that goal, as well as the GHG-free goals. But then you go at the bottom one, and the bottom one you see no new PPA portfolio, and it fails to meet a lot of those goals. It fails to meet the contracted PRM goals because they're not getting those capacity resources. If you don't meet them, then essentially it means that you have to go ahead and procure additional capacity, and it's going to cost you. And it does not meet the RPS goals, so that means you have to go to the market and get all those renewable energy credit to meet the RPS goals. And the GHG free also require you're not meeting that particular goal. So you can see that the recommended portfolio performs fairly well, and we'll show you later on that it will fairly well even under the high demand sensitivity case. And the message here is that if you are on a high demand trajectory, then you need to make some decisions to procure more resources post, I would say, 2035 time frame. So this sort of, if you recall, I talked about being nimble in your planning. So if as you see things changing, then you can switch those gears and plan, make certain changes to it. But when you look back and you said, well, I really made good decisions, even in 2030 to 2035 timeframe, if you go back and you'll see that you made those good decisions in procuring additional resources in sort of 2030, 29 timeframe. So that becomes more sort of your least regrets approach as you move forward with this recommended portfolio. For the no new PPA portfolio, it just doesn't cut it as far as meeting the state policy goals and clearly adds to your cost in terms of the renewable procurement and also additional capacity, firm resources procurement is concerned. Jared, anything else to add?
Yeah, one thing I just want to add here, because many of our board members have been here for quite a while, which is great. So why are we talking about 2040 so much, not 2045 as much? We're thinking about it, but for the GHG laws, 95% has to be GHG free by 2040, but by 2035 has to be 90%. So one of the reasons why, and this is probably explained before to the board, but one of the reasons why we're always looking at a variety of projects, a portfolio of projects for many years, going back, Joe Horvath, same thing, I was doing the same thing in other places too. We're all planning ahead of, we need carbon-free resources to comply with law. And if you don't have them, sure, you can be super RPS, super green, you still don't comply with law. And then you're just paying the fines to catch up. So you didn't get anywhere. So it's where it gets so complicated, but that 90% by 2035 of GHG-free resources, important to keep in the back of our minds, as well as the RPS.
Thanks, Jared. And here is the key charts. I apologize for all the complexities, but here's the key one. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, but I'm sure Jared can go over and walk through the chart a little bit better than what I can do remotely here. The way to read this chart is on the x-axis, you have those net present value of cost. Remember, we represented those portfolios cost, and I think when I showed you those earlier slides, they were about 201.5. That was the performance. So the blue line that you see, the vertical blue line there, it intersects exactly at that $201.5 billion. So that's your reference point. That's what you get when the things are just planned in terms of your load forecast, hydro conditions, gas prices, market prices, whatever we have assumed, and if that thing happens, that's your cost. But the question is, how is this preferred or recommended portfolio performs under different elements? So we have developed a range of sensitivity values on those key variables. So what if you plan for certain hydro trajectory, but something else happened? You have a bunch of dry years there. If that happens, what will happen? If your loads are much higher than what you expected or lower than what you expected, your PPA prices, that we have made some assumptions based on publicly available information that you have, or what if that geothermal PPA price is 25% higher? What happens then? Or what happens if the solar price is another 15% higher, and so on? And so we have run those sensitivities, and you can see that as far as load is concerned, there is this swing that if the loads are really low, your net present value of a cost could, rather than 201.5, it can go down to $190 million. But if it's high load, then it could be as high as $213 million. But of course, if it's a high load, you'd be able to transfer those costs to your ratepayers, because your energy is going to be also very, load is going to be higher. But look at that PPA price, which is on the top, that number's the second part there. That also, you can see that if you have PPA prices that are lower than what you expected, well, it could be 196 instead of 201, but it could go as high as $214 million in terms of its value. So you can see that the PPA prices and the load has probably the highest impact. And then you have certain, RA uncertainty, the resource adequacy has some moderate cost impact. As far as the NVE, the one on the top that you see, that's an NVE energy transmission charge that you pay, those are basically pass-through charges. So those NVE transmission charges have some impact on cost, but only local resources can avoid that charge. And then there are the limitations on the amount of such resources that makes it a more sort of a less important decision factor. But the other factors are clearly, so we have basically stress tested the performance of the recommended portfolio using some extreme range of each sensitivity parameter, changing one variable at a time. And as you can see in this, what you call a tornado diagram, there's various combination of those sensitivities can be developed to create some additional scenarios to further test the robustness of this alternative portfolios. So as you can see from here that, you have certain uncertainties, but you have to manage those uncertainties. And we think that having this over contracting in some respect will allow you to hedge those risks via, your significant long-term contracting will help you. And basically all other uncertainties are relatively insignificant. And overall, therefore, the recommended portfolio performed really well under uncertainty. Any questions? Or Jared, you have anything to add?
Do I have anything to add? So this is the tornado diagram. This was Katie's favorite one. It is a really neat way of looking at this and understanding where are our risks, where are our uncertainties. It's pretty complicated. One thing that I'll point out, it's hard to see, is things like the LV TAC on CVP delivered. What that is, that's the low voltage transmission access charge on Central Valley project. That is, how do we get our WAPA power? It's kind of hard, right? No one's quite figured it out just yet. There's ways, and I'm working on them. I could speak to you a while about how to get there, and we've been speaking about them a while too. We're trying to figure out a solution. We don't have a great one just yet, but we're working on it. But that would actually act as a very nice hedge. If we could get this easily, and maybe instead of the low voltage charge, we got on the high voltage charge, that's actually less money. It would actually like a nice shield to protect us and give us a chance to lower our rates. So when I read this, I look at it and go, all right, what can I do in here on our day-to-day basis, planning out, where I can take advantage of something that might lower our rates? The catch for that is it may not be looking at like the cost of energy. It may not be looking at the traditional things we always think about. If you look at the weird variables. Transmission charge is an obvious one for that same idea. Anything we build internally, doesn't matter what time it is, what time of day, it doesn't make any difference. It will reduce our cost to transmit energy from outside our grid into our grid. So how much should we build? Well, there's a sweet spot somewhere in between there. What is it? You saw it in there. We have to look at the 1 to 12 megawatts, huge swing of, but where's the sweet spot? We're hunting it down, hunting it down. If you saw one of the slides that Joe brought up earlier, he showed how we had nothing in there for commercial EV growth, commercial solar growth. in Truckee. Because it's true, we don't really have any plans for commercial solar growth, so let's not assume we're gonna get 5 megawatts of commercial solar. Community solar is different, we're working that internally, but not commercial solar. I don't know if the commercial businesses are gonna be open to putting solar here. Watch with the winters, it may not work very well. That's just our reality.
Hey, Jared, can you, at the microphone so the public can hear you, just point out the screen, but head back to the mic so the public can still hear you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that, thanks for trying. So there's opportunity in this one too, where it's part of our plan, and then more opportunity of how we can optimize this. So like, so that same example, to finish that one, would commercial solar be a good idea? On some number of arrays, yes, absolutely. But can we get them to actually do it here in Truckee? Not really sure. But if we create a program that helps it work, then yes, we can. Of course we can. So that's an opportunity to hedge against this and make this more attractive. And more attractive in this case, to me, means lower rates. There's a lot in this slide, though. I definitely am aware of that. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. So this is my last slide before I hand it over to Katie. And if you recall, I put those check boxes or those 6 bullets, but these were exactly the same questions we asked before developing that recommended portfolio. And we said, is it reliable in terms of maintaining the planning reserve margin? And the answer is a yes. Does it have one of the lowest cost of procurement and it reduces the exposure to market volatility? The answer was yes. It does comply with the state's environmental goals and policy. It includes resource diversity. It is a good fit in terms of balancing resources against loads. You saw those hourly charts that we presented in terms of how it's doing hour by hour. And does it well? Does it perform well in terms of under the range of sensitivity? And you saw that tornado diagram, that it wasn't very wide. Those tornadoes that were pretty wide, then you would have, it is a bad thing, in some respect. Those are the drivers that you cannot control. But it was pretty narrow in most of those sensitivities that we saw. So it meets all projected demand and is reliable in terms of maintaining the planning reserve margin. It has lowest overall cost of procurement. It reduces market volatility. It complies with states' goals and policies. And it includes the resource diversity. So we recommend that there is district explore the potential for increasing the proportion of the geothermal or the other baseload resources into recommended portfolio, with sort of corresponding decrease in over-reliance on storage plus solar. Since this potentially could result in lower overall costs and also increase the resource diversity. That's all I had, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Go ahead.
Well, your head stop spinning so much. We'll see if I'm successful or not. I think so. I'm just going to try to do some summary. After the demand forecast before the load modifiers would grow at about 2%. When we take account of the load modifiers, some of which increase load, some of which decrease load, we're looking at 1.7 to 2.8% load growth. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it turns out 1% actually matters by a lot over time. You will continue to be a winter peaking utility. And Pushkar had a graphic where he showed you that when you procure to meet your winter load, one consequence of that is that you will have excess supply that you can sell in the summer when California is resource short. That puts you in a good position. Or I like that position, let's put it that way. The district should continue to invest in energy efficiency. Joe talked a lot about this. But part of what we got to do as a result of this IRP is recognize the old EE programs don't work anymore. I mean, they were largely lighting programs, light bulb programs. Well, today, those programs have been replaced by codes and standards such that you cannot go and buy a 100 watt light bulb anymore. You cannot find them. They are not allowed to be sold. So that's an example of a program, lighting program that ultimately got replaced by a code, appliance code. I'm not saying the right words. Building code or appliance standard. There, I finally got it out. In this case, it's an appliance standard. So we've got to look at different programs. And one that you might look at that occurred, I learned about today, is that you're a water utility. You've got those 42 water tanks up the hill. You may be able to shift when you pump the water up. That may save you energy. That would then reduce your procurement cost, and that savings could be passed on both to electric and to water ratepayers. So something to think about as we think about energy efficiency. The other thing that I thought about is your friends at the library talked about the new library. My brain is going, make sure that's a brand new lead building that's got energy efficiency built into it. And community solar, well, maybe there's a way to incorporate solar panels on the roof or the parking lot or something. Maybe that gives Jared a new resource there. You face the same competition that everybody else is facing in chasing these new supplies. One of the great bits of news about geothermal is the application of this new hydraulic fracturing technology to the rock structures, such that we're not just trying to harvest steam out of the rock, but we're sending tubing down and liquid in the tubes and pulling the hot liquid back up the tube. It's a totally different way of doing geothermal. BLM has granted permits in, I think it's 17 counties in Nevada to apply that technology. So that's a sea change in geothermal availability that I hope really changes the market, because I find that exciting. Silly me. The recommended portfolio, Pushkar has shown you, achieves your resource adequacy. It meets your clean energy greenhouse gas goals, but it provides this reasonable net present value compared to the other portfolios that he's looked at and that we've looked at together. But to the extent as these contracts, some of the existing contracts fall away, you won't be resource adequate. So you have to take some sort of action in terms of procuring new resources to achieve the resource adequacy goal and to achieve the clean energy goal. This is an opportunity for you to not be so dependent, if you will, on UAMPS, for example. Take control of your destiny. This is what an IRP does for you. The other things that you have out of the IRP here is that not only the model that Flint RCI, Pushkar have built, you can update that as you go along. This is not a static snapshot. This can be updated with, in fact, as we've conducted the project here, we've had resources that we thought were in the portfolio that evaporated. The clean energy power plant in small modular nuke in Idaho disappeared. So things are going to change, and the model gives you the ability to say, oh, let me put that resource into my portfolio and see how my NPV changes. You can do that. Jared can do that on the fly almost. You've also got tools with respect to the demand forecast that is also not static. It is built to be easily updatable for you. To the extent that the PV charging accelerates at a higher rate than we think it's going to today, you can reflect that into capture that in demand forecast and rebalance then the portfolio. So these are tools that you now have. And with that, thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the opportunity to be helpful. It's what we live for. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. We put them to sleep.
Thank you very much. And, okay, let's open it to public comment, do our standard, see if there's any public out there on the IRP. All right, I don't see any. What I got, three things. We went from meatloaf to lasagna, now tornado. So that we used to call our portfolio the meatloaf, and then we went to lasagna, and now we upgraded to tornado.
Throwing it around.
Yeah.
I have a question. Jared, back when you were mixing the renewables, you said at the end of your comments, you said, and that's what's gonna happen to us. What's gonna happen to us? I missed a paragraph before that, or I was asleep, or I don't know, maybe not listening, I don't know.
Here, I'll give you an idea. I tried to create this. This is a very early draft of something that you're going to get used to the lasagna chart. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
I love that. I never heard that before. Coming here, that's a good one. This chart, what this shows is, and this is a very early version. And Brian and I have been talking through this, and there's a big piece that's coming. But short version of all that. If I drew a little line right here. What you can't see is this is January 2024. So this is our actual here going backwards in time, and then we have forecast going forward. We have these resources, and that's what each of these colors look like. These colors are ordered in the dispatch of the resources. This is how they are told to turn on. It doesn't really matter if you're a solar array, if you're something else, you're this and that. It doesn't make a difference. What your baseload resource is what contract you sign saying you're turning that thing on first. So like in this chart, for example, on the very bottom, the blue, the lowest one, that's our Stampede Hydro project, Stampede Hydro. That's a baseload for us. Not because it's a hydro, because it's a contract. It's dispatching first. If you look at this red up here, well, that's something different. Sorry, you look at the darker red here, that's NEBO, the gas plant. It's dispatched last. What's the green? The market purchases, those undefined ones that we often offset with RECs and everything else. Going backwards in time, this is how you do the game. The game is you try to meet yours, and the top line is our actual demand for every month going backwards till January 2021. We've all seen and heard this before in our finance, everything else. This is a way of just kind of graphing it and saying, okay, how exposed do we want to be with the green? In the future, we're going to want to be over-procuring. So we start today to over-procure at some point in time in the future because it's cheaper today. And the folks who don't do that will be selling to them. And that will be offsetting some of our costs. And these market transactions happen every single day, every hour of the day, and they're settled at the end of the month. So it's all about the finance at the end of the month to show how much it costs at the end of the month, but the change is constantly happening. The lines you see in here, this purple line here, this is kind of forecasting forward. What you see going forward here as it drops below the line is, one, I didn't put in the green more, saying let's just assume more market purchases, because there's more than one way to get there, like internal generation. So would we apply internal generation in here? No, we could, but no, because we're not buying anything. It's already, if it's our solar, for example, or on the library, we might have already resolved it. It's just going to be less that we buy from outside our grid, as Pushkar was saying. But like this green here going away, which, this could be a contract we have that could be going away. It isn't extended. They decommissioned it. It could be a lot of reasons why. It's no longer viable. It got past useful life. Lots of reasons why. So what's the future going to be? It's going to be constantly looking at our hourly purchases, filling that in. So looking at taking our hourly forecast, filling it in with the purchases we need, actually over-procuring with a plan to sell some of our, all of it, but our over-procurement into the grid to others. That's my best way of explaining where we're going.
Okay, the way you said, that's what's gonna happen to us. I didn't know whether that was good or bad. So we gotta keep buying the green.
Well, frankly, you got to keep buying whatever is the most cost-effective, but that is green energy.
There's no green on the market right now, is it?
There is.
There is?
There is, yeah.
But it's high or what?
It depends. There's so many sources, so many different types. I'll give a random example. So right now in California, there is an overbuilt of solar. In Texas, is actually overbuilt of some solar, but definitely overbuilt of wind. But the problem with California, the load isn't going down. So when people hear the solar was curtailed, it's not because the load went down. It's not because Southern California, LA, everyone's moving out. It's because there's so much solar in Southern California, you can't get it from the desert there of California into the city of California because the transmission lines are, for lack of better words, physically too small. So the transmission lines are constrained. If you know that as a utility, you use it to your advantage. So if we see a constraint in the transmission lines coming to, we wouldn't invest in most likely, we wouldn't invest in a solar array in Southern California because the cost to get to our doorstep to the transmission lines would be far too high. That's why that tornadogram, you had the transmission cost from NV. So we buy the generation source that's most cost effective, that meets the rules and the laws. It's pretty much that simple, and most of those are going to be things, to tell you the truth, it won't be things like solar. It's actually quite saturated in the market now. We have lots of solar. It'll be more things like geothermal, absolutely, but like I said, everyone's chasing it. Wind will be a big one. California has huge commitments to build offshore wind off Mendocino. And their plans to have it online by 2030. I can promise you that's not happening. 2032 was what I would have said it 2 years ago, but I was looking for some milestones. That's not happening either. I'd say more like 2035. It's possible and simple. I know it's simple. When I see them invest money into a port in California, then I will start looking at that wind extremely more carefully. I'm watching it very closely, but I'm not interested because you can't build it. It's physically too big. The wind turbine cannot get there. They're too big. You got to build a seaport. But the federal government just threw $450 million at Mendocino County, or the town there, Mendocino. So that's a chance to build a port up. That doesn't cover your wind turbines, the chains to hold the wind turbines down, the nacelles. There's so many, the ships to bring it out there. None of that's covered. The connection to the grid, not covered either. But they invested in the port. That's a start. So how long will it take to build that up? I think 10, 12 years. They can be online now. It won't be 2030 though. We all waited too long.
And that's wind.
That's wind. That's offshore wind. But as that ramps up, that's an opportunity for us to potentially buy some of those resources in that one. But we're always looking for wind in other parts of California and in other parts of all the way going west to Montana, like Horse Butte. Horse Butte Phase 1 is already online. Phase 2 is coming online. So like some of these graphs, it's in there, but like in this graph right here, Horse Butte Phase 2 is not in here yet. I will begin to add these things when I can figure a way to explain this in a way that makes sense for our planning. But this is the IRP from Aspen and Flynn there. It's going to incorporate into here in our purchase supply, going out a long way. So, Joe, Director Aguirre, to answer your question, I'd say it's a good thing for us. But what's good for us is we are currently in a position of advantage. We can lose it, but currently in a position of advantage. Many utilities around us are scrambling to figure this out because they're already behind. They're just barely complying with law.
Yeah, we're the furthest ahead of the whole state of California.
We're in a pretty good spot. We're not the furthest ahead. There's a few others ahead of us, but we're in a good spot.
Who is?
There's a few others. A few others have did some things earlier than us that I'd say are some pretty smart moves in hindsight. But we are definitely ahead of the game. So optimizing that for our advantage is very important.
Then it's up to you to keep us ahead of it. So when you buy the power, you buy a little extra.
That's right. And figure out whatever I buy to make sure it's capable of being resold at a time when it has the highest value.
Right.
I don't want to resell it when it has no value or cheap value or negative pricing when it has high value.
Well, I don't think it will go down.
has a question too. He's raising his hand back there.
Steve Gross.
Can I ask a question here? I'm trying to understand what's changed with the risk analysis for us, because utilities are risk adverse. And my understanding is that historically, we, like other utilities, have tried to purchase power to meet our load. right? We don't go long, we don't buy excess. Why? Because it's risky. If you buy it at 100 and you sell it at 80, you've got a huge loss. And so historically, utilities have tried, my understanding, at least public power has tried to avoid that type of risk. We've always been a winter peaking utility. So we've always had that opportunity to go long, right, in the winter and sell off in the summer. But we never had because we're risk adverse. And so I guess as I hear this push to go long and to over procure, it seems like it's counter to every anti-risk policy that I've ever heard of. And I'm trying to understand why is that changing for us now? And if that's changing for every utility, right? I think I heard that's going to be the new model. Everybody's going to try to go long. What happens when everybody's long? Prices ultimately tank. So I don't know. I'm just trying to understand that because it.
Right. No, it's a great question. I mean, what's really changed is the fact that the market is so short. I mean, the market condition has changed with the RPS requirements and the greenhouse gas SB 100 clean energy requirement and the desire by citizens for clean power. That's what's changed. The other thing I'll tell you is your downside risk is much smaller than your upside risk. In that we just saw a few weeks ago with the cold, Mid-Columbia prices went to $900 a megawatt hour. But if you procured it, let's say $50 a megawatt hour, the maximum amount you can lose is $50 per megawatt hour. But your upside risk is unbounded. So I think there's sort of a realization as we've come into the energy imbalance market and the greater integration across the West in this scenario where we're short resources, that's what changes the calculation.
I'd add to that too. If without this IRP, if you'd asked me the same question, I would have explained it quite much like that. With the IRP, let's say we just rode the markets and left ourselves exposed daily, rode the markets more, didn't really work to find new generation. It would be a $30 million, I'm gonna say the word loss, I don't know, it's the wrong word, but it would cost us $30 million more. So our rates would have to go higher because of that. So newsflash, any utility out there who's not thinking this way, they're gonna have higher rates. So one of our main goals is reliable power and low rates. And at this point in time, with what's happening now, the action of saying like green power, everything else, you slowly phase it out, the conversation, because it's law. There's no more choice. If you want to go buy something that's not green, it'll cost you a fortune, and it's out of service in a couple of years. So that's where things have changed greatly. But
Can I add one more thing, Jared? Sorry. I'm just thinking about some analysis that Joe and I are doing right now, actually. And one of the things that we've detected and observed are power prices in the market are fluctuating much more widely with increasing magnitudes of the fluctuation. So it's more frequent spikes and bigger spikes in market power prices.
yeah, we are absolutely seeing that now, and
Well, those prices change every day, don't they? Or every,
every 5 minutes.
all right. I was gonna say, or by the hour. Yeah. Somebody changes them, I mean, the way the market go up and down,
Oh, yeah.
they just, so every day you check on the price of what we're buying now.
I'll give you an example of where risk has changed a lot in recent times too. So now, it used to be when we're buying power, it was working against other utilities, against whatever, all competing for things and bidding and pricing. Today, it's not just other utilities buying power, it's also things like data centers, transportation, Google, these Amazon, they're putting huge value in their stocks towards being greener, being more sustainable. That's a pain in the neck. It's another competitor, and they are good. They have AI running for them. I give them a lot of credit. They're good. But you know what they don't have? They're not nimble. They're not nimble, they're not experienced. So we have an advantage. I don't know how long we can play that for against them, but I can assure you the advantage of being a small utility, one of the reasons why I recommend don't do IRPs when you don't have to, is keep it quiet. Don't tell everyone what you're doing, because we can beat them. We've been able to beat them for many years. We can outthink them. They're getting smarter and smarter. The CCA's coming on. The CCA's, community choice aggregators. They can come to a community, like a CCA can come into Truckee and say, we'll buy the energy and you can leave the PUD, let them use the power lines, but we'll buy energy for you. We can be greener and cheaper. That is a good idea, except do they know how? And what they found out is they don't know how. But to be greener, they had to go out and start buying a lot more green power. And they're paying a premium for it. So what happened, like the REC market, I'll ignore the energy part of it, just the renewable energy credit market. What happened over the past 2 years, it was cruising $15-16 per megawatt hour for the green energy REC. 2 years later, it was at $80. There's no scenario where we can afford to buy green energy at that rate. It's unaffordable. It'll just tank you. So you got to be nimble, you got to be smart, you got to think ahead. Or you build a lot, you put steel in the ground. Truckee did that.
Yeah.
That's a big advantage too. Like Horse Butte, put steel in the ground, like Horse Butte.
Investors,
Oh,
and
yeah,
we.
yeah.
Very, very unwise. Going backwards in time 10 years ago, the utilities said, I don't want to build, it's too risky. I bet you regret that now. You know, look how much prices all went up. The price for pipes skyrocketed. Everything went up. Should have built early.
Your IRP is your AI superpower. So it's given you a way of taking stock of where you are and where you may need to go, and tools that you can apply to get there. Besides what's in Jared's imagination.
Oh, that's a good tool.
So to kind of bring this to a conclusion, for now anyways, what our plan is, any feedback we get, we can incorporate into this, because there's a final report, that's a big report, but this is a piece of that. And we would plan to come back to the board again to basically ask to adopt this plan. So any changes or feedback from anybody, we're happy to take it, incorporate here, but that's the next steps.
I loved this. I thought it was super interesting, and I was happy to. It tracked with my hopes, put it that way. That's what I saw what I wanted to see for the most part, and it's, you know, you can't argue with data really. I would like to myself just look at it more closely, just for my own, continued education, and being able to talk about these things, like you said, all of the acronyms, and making sure that with the community, I want to be able to communicate this plan clearly and easily with my people in the community. And I think that's, this presentation is a big chunk towards that. Things have changed so much, and these are the things that we've been talking about here on the dais since 2018. I was like, things are gonna change really fast. The markets are gonna drive us in directions that we were not thinking about at that moment in time. And this is all of that. It's exactly, what I ran for in 2018. Seeing these things were coming. I didn't know what they were gonna look like. I still, but this is a real, very, very helpful synopsis of how the landscape has just changed under our feet. So it's great. It's like you said, it's giving us an opportunity. It's giving us a chance to become even more, our rates can go down, our renewables can go up, our greenhouse gas footprint can shrink. We can help we can help this all happen. And it's exciting. It's exciting. So thank you all. Thank you for all of this information. Thank you, staff, for instigating it and helping us understand it.
Thank you, Jared. We're not buying green now because it's the highest price now, huh?
Well, we might buy now, but it may not come, it's one of the slides had it, it may not come online until 2028, 2030, 2035. Sometimes buy early, it's very cheap, but it won't come on tomorrow.
If we buy it now, do we keep it? I mean, is
Yes.
that ours to keep,
Hmm.
whether we use it or not?
Or if we even sell it to somebody
Or
else.
we can sell it, yeah, yeah. Okay. Because I know that Joe was getting us up there pretty good on the resource, but all of a sudden, he said, yeah, the last time we talked about it, he says, no, we're not, it can't be had. It gets us so high. Everybody wants to buy it, but too high.
Yeah, if he is correct. If you wanted to buy more green energy for, literally for tomorrow, I'm not speaking facetiously, literally for tomorrow, it would be very high. If you want to buy it for 1 year from today, not so bad. 10 years out, much less. So it's about a plan, a very careful plan, and what we can afford as part of our budget. So, but that's
You're working on that.
absolutely. Joe did a good job. Joe did a very good job. It's continuing what he did. He was not wrong. It's continuing what he did.
Steve Hollabaugh, he was always on that computer, every hour, looking for stuff.
I've got some questions. So you brought it up at the end, but UAMPS, how does UAMPS fit into this? Are we still partnering with them on the purchases, or are we trying to show them a new direction because we're California and?
They're our source.
Yeah, absolutely. So what UAMPS does for us today, and they'll continue to do for us for as long as I can see in the future, is they are a power scheduler. So anything we go by, they schedule it into the grid for us and do reporting for us on the grid. You can do it yourself, but you need a lot of staff to do that.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to do it that way. It makes more sense, and they're very good at it. But if there's a project out there we have a chance to buy that's not a UAMPS project, Stampede, TCID, not everything we buy came through UAMPS. Everything we have is scheduled through UAMPS, but they didn't all come through them. So looking for new projects, because for them, they might have members who go, I'm not interested in that thing. It has no value to me where I am, but it has value to us. Then we go after on our own, or maybe even with them. We even have projects sometimes we're going after with other members who need it of UAMPS, not the whole pool, through UAMPS. So we're looking, there's many things happening going after generation resources. I don't want to keep everyone here all night with how some of those different ones out there, but no, you're still using UAMPS.
And then Steve touched upon it, but our exposure, like our risk exposure, where is it expanded now? Are we insured against it? Are we, where's the risk? I imagine when you're going through all this information, I imagine like a juggler. And then all of a sudden they throw in a bowling ball in there. And then all of a sudden they throw in like a cotton ball. So you're like trying to weigh all these different things when trying to juggle everything. I'm just making sure, it's the wave of the future. This is where we're going. But that's another element of it is our risk and coverage and making sure that obviously that we're keeping the lights on and we're not, the contracts are reviewed and that's kind of where my head was going with some of the risk.
If I could give you an analogy of that, to think of that where that risk is higher, is actually if you're juggling and somebody takes one away.
Yes.
Because we're juggling, life is good, we're doing great, this is great, take one away, now it's a problem. If you threw another one in there, it actually makes it easier. In the problem of juggling, it's more is more diversity, less risk. Less is all eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's where you get yourself in the hot water.
Okay.
So, and then you touched on it in Steve's question of just buying long, i.e. risky, but we're doing that to comply with the greenhouse. I just wrote a little thing down to kind of make it makes sense in my head. Buying long to comply with the greenhouse gases and RPS rules that we're getting hit with, and then actually to reduce our risk in rates and costs for power procurement. So I guess, yes, we're taking a risk by buying long, but then what I was seeing in the IRP, that the actual risk is greater if we don't buy long, and that's what we're seeing with the additional potential $30 million. If we don't buy long, then that risk is greater for higher rates, higher power procurement, and then not meeting the rules.
Yeah, the more ingredients in lasagna, the better. The more layers, the better. And the more staggered their time frame of contracts, also the better. Variety, complexity is how you win. Pain in the neck.
Jared, this is Pushkar here. Can I add one thing about, because people are saying we are going for more long than long. You're not actually long as far as the resource adequacy capacity is concerned. You need that steel in the ground. That's what everybody's struggling for. Resource adequacy value was just $4 to $5 a kilowatt month. That's how it is sold. Today, it is $50 to $60 per kilowatt month. That capacity, the steel in the ground that you need to have, is very, very valuable. So if you look at the planning reserve margin, we are barely meeting it with this recommended portfolio. What you have long is energy, that in some hours, you're going to have higher energy than what you need to meet your goals. That you can sell, and that way you can manage your risk pretty well. But if you don't have enough capacity, then you'll be in a pickle. So that's what we're talking about. Not really long from capacity, just barely meet your capacity. But if that results in being long for energy, so be it.
The RA.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
we
the
need to
RA
have
is
enough
the
RA to keep our costs down, but we may not be able to use it. So we can sell it.
Correct.
And then the other item that kind of crept up in there is the storage. So it's going down the path of storage, and I'm sure that there's going to be a cost associated with some of that storage. And but that's another thing that it's at some point. I feel like I need a noodle on this for a while, but that's one of the items that I would be interested in hearing a little more in depth about that plan as part of it. So.
We'll make a note of that. The one thing, the short, as you're noodling through it, the one thing to remember is because we're a utility, one of the advantages we have, our strengths, is we're able to buy power and sell power. So if we can buy power at dirt cheap, even negative, and then resell it at a high price, so we can buy it, store it, sell it later at a high price, there's multiple ways of doing that. That's why we're doing the battery project. We do it right, and we will. It will actually reduce our costs.
Great. Thank you. It's late and I don't want to get too in-depth, so thank you.
Just to ask one question, because there's a lot of questions that have already been talked about. So is this transition manageable within the confines of this organization today?
Yes. Partially because we're ahead of the game. If we were behind the game, I'd go, you got a problem. But because we're in a decent spot, it's about keeping the momentum going. And you have to get very creative, and you got to think way outside the box, and we have to change things, like energy efficiency programs, working with the water team. But nice thing is, working the water team, well, that's going to be easy. So we have some really easy ones that we're going to take advantage of to the absolute most we can. The harder ones, they're going to be hard and challenging, but yeah, we can handle it.
Okay. No, it's just, it's a big leap, and it's a complex process, and I have confidence we hired the right guy, you, to manage it, but I can see it's a lot of work. Thanks.
You gotta be on it all the time, all the time.
I think Jared has the passion for that, so it's going to be awesome.
Great. Final thoughts, good. Do you have clear as mud, huh, Jared? You got good direction now. Crystal,
No, the Paris Bud is over here.
Right.
Well, I guess, so we'll share the plan, and
Yeah.
any feedback, however it can come in, is great. And seriously, whatever the wackiest idea you heard your entire life, please send it, because anything helps figure this whole thing out. And sometimes you're in the weeds, you miss something, so.
Yeah, we'll make the presentation available. We'll also engage, there's an opportunity to engage with staff between now and the final product, so we can update Aspen on anything we get feedback on, and make sure that the final project meets the board's expectations, but also something you're comfortable with adopting and moving forward. Like the team at Aspen said, this is not a static project. It's a plan, and it's fluid, and we adapt with some of the assumptions that are made. We'll have to adapt and change as we move forward. But it's for the first time, as it was mentioned at the beginning, it's a long-term plan for the district to meet our goals.
And just real quick, just on behalf of the board, I just want to thank Jared and the
Yes,
and
thank
the
you.
IRP team for all the hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Pushkar. Thanks, Joe.
Hi.
Good
Thank you.
night,
Night.
man.
Good night, thank
So
you.
adopted. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Great, excellent. Thank you. All right, done with the workshops. We got some routine business to get through. Item 16, approval of the treasurer's report, February 2024.
I'll move that we accept the report and also let's pay the bills.
Okay,
that are
thank you.
already paid. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any public comment on the treasurer's report? Got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sorry, thank you again.
You're all good.
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
President Bender?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 17, minutes from January 17th, 2024. Public comment, minutes. Any comments from the board, questions, motion?
I have to say, I like the minutes. I feel like it gives a better flavor of what goes on here, so I appreciate that. But I'll make a motion for the minutes as presented.
Great.
I'll second.
All right, motion second. Roll call, please.
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
I didn't read it.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
President Bender?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, number 18, closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Conference with legal counsel, exposure to litigation, 2 cases. And we're going to go into closed session now. Thank you.